Chapter 1148. Not long after, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun arrived underground. Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that this underground was a very simple stone room. However, although a sparrow was small, it was complete. Everything that was needed was available in this stone room. Just by looking at the praying mat used for meditation, it could be seen that Di Beichun had been cultivating here for quite some time. When Tiangang sect was first established, I discovered that there was a natural elemental energy gathering array here. The effect of gathering elemental energy is extremely powerful. Master built my palace here to allow me to cultivate better. Di Beichun's eyes flashed with a faint smile. Master had always treated him extremely well. For him to be able to raise his cultivation at such a young age, it was inseparable from this stone room. Thinking about it, Master also wanted to stabilize his position as the young sect master. Cultivating here, the speed of improvement would be much faster than other places. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed Di Beichun's gaze and understood the importance of the sect master in Di Beichun's heart. Speaking of which, the sect master was really good to Di Beichun. It was as if he treated Di Beichun as his own grandson. She only hoped that the sect master could break through and return as soon as possible. She also wanted to see this master that Di Beichun was indebted to. Di Beichun quickly recovered his emotions. His deep gaze landed on Bailey Hongzhuang. "Wife, you can cultivate here." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Okay, cultivating here really had the effect of half the effort. She only hoped that her strength would be more stable. "Wife, I will be going to the Juyun sect to discuss the assessment in the next few days. I will be back in a few days. You can cultivate here in peace for the next few days. When I return, I will naturally look for you. Even if those people want to find trouble with you, they won't know where you are. It will save some trouble. Lady Xia and the rest still need a few days to reach the Tiangang sect. I believe they will be back around the same time as me." His black eyes were filled with concern and pampering. If it wasn't for the assessment, he wanted to bring Hongzhuang to the Juyun sect. However, time was of the essence now. Raising his cultivation was the most important thing. Fortunately, no one else knew about this stone room other than him and his master. Hongzhuang wouldn't have any problems cultivating here. Seeing that Di Beichun was so considerate for her, Bailey Hongzhuang was touched. "Don't worry, I will be fine here." Di Beichun had just returned to Tiangang zone. Naturally, there were many things that needed to be dealt with. She could not delay Di Beichun's time. Thinking about it, Di Beichun had been accompanying her outside during this time, which had caused a lot of dissatisfaction. She could not let such dissatisfaction grow. After all, she didn't want to end up with the title of femme fatale. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's understanding expression, the gentleness in Di Beichun's eyes deepened. "I will be back soon." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Okay. After Di Beichun left, Bailey Hongzhuang sat down on the stone bed. This place faintly emitted Di Beichun's unique fragrance. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi jumped down from Bailey Hongzhuang's body. The three beasts' faces were filled with excitement. This is really a good place to cultivate. Xiao He ran around the stone room. The stone room wasn't big, but it was arranged very well. Chapter 1149. I was wondering why the concentration of elemental energy in Tiangang sect was higher than that of other sections. It turns out that there is a natural elemental energy gathering array here. Di Beichun's palace is located at the spring of this elemental energy gathering array, so the elemental energy is the densest here. Xiaobai cannot help but sigh. The sect leader is really good to Di Beichun, giving such a good location to Di Beichun. Logically speaking, such a treasured place should be the sect leader's palace, but the sect leader gave it to Di Beichun as his palace. Just this action alone was more than 1,000 words. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood. There is a barrier set up here. I think the other people in Tiangang sect don't know that there is such a good place to cultivate. This barrier is set up very discreetly, completely isolating the elemental energy fluctuations. If it weren't for Xiao Bai and my spiritual power being very sensitive, we wouldn't have discovered it in a short time, Xiao He said. This is really a good place to cultivate. Baishur lay lazily on the stone bed. Although the stone bed was very hard, the brocade and bedding made it very soft. It only felt that this place was really too comfortable. Even when it breathed, the rich elemental energy would enter its body. Looking at Baishur's lazy appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. This little guy was too cute. No matter what it did, it was indescribably cute. Di Beichun must be worried that Han Shilling will come and find trouble with you. However, in my opinion, after the incident in the meeting hall, Han Shilling will not continue to be so unappreciative, Xiao He said. Xiao Bai shook her head. That may not be so. Han Shilling is not a good person at first glance. In order to get what she wants, she will do anything. I don't think she will give up so easily. According to her understanding, some cultivators who thought highly of themselves would be especially paranoid when they lost something. Han Shilling had lived in Tiangang's sect since she was young and was a proud daughter in everyone's eyes. She had probably never suffered such a big setback. Now that Di Beichun had rejected her in front of everyone and even openly brought her master to Tiangang's sect, it was no different from giving her a hard slap. Just this resentment. Han Shiling would not swallow it so easily. Hearing Xiao Bai's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a cold light. She also had a certain understanding of Han Shiling's character, but things had already come to this. No matter how unwilling Han Shilling was, no use was. It was useless no matter how unwilling Han Shilling was unwilling. Forget it. I just need to focus on cultivating now. I don't need to think about these problems. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand. Her beautiful face revealed an elegant smile. Since she was here, she naturally would not miss such a good opportunity to cultivate. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes and began cultivating. As Bailey Hongzhuang circulated the demon summoning scripture, the abundant Yuan Li in the surroundings flowed into Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's breathing, it strengthened the Yuan Li in her dantian. Di Beichun's departure from Tiangang's sect was not a secret. Han Shilling also received the news immediately. Miss, young sect master has already left the sect for Juyun's sect. Chapter 1150. Hearing Tao Songrong's words, Han Shilling's eyes narrowed. Did Bailey Hongzhuang go with Big Brother D? His bright black eyes flickered with a sinister and cold light. Han Shilling gradually clenched his fists. If Big Brother D brought Bailey Hongzhuang to Juyun's sect, no, I saw young sect master leave by himself. Tao Songrong replied. Following Tao Songrong's words, Han Shilling's tightly clenched fists finally relaxed. Fortunately, Big Brother D did not bring Bailey Hongzhuang with him. When she thought of Big Brother D and Bailey Hongzhuang being intimate and loving that day, her heart felt stifled. It was so stifling that she could not breathe. Ever since that day at the discussion hall, she had never left her residence, because she could not face the gazes of the sect disciples. All along, she had been a high and mighty existence. Now, she was afraid that everyone was mocking her in their hearts. This huge difference made her unwilling to go out and meet people. It was simply too embarrassing. And all of this was because of Bailey Hongzhuang. Han Shiling's lips curled into a cold smile. Big Brother D actually did not bring Bailey Hongzhuang with him to Juyun's sect. It seems that Big Brother D does not want to make Bailey Hongzhuang public. Tao Songrong nodded repeatedly. Of course. I don't know what young sect master is thinking. Actually, Bailey Hongzhuang is simply not presentable. Young sect master is heading to Juyun's sect this time. All the cultivators in Shaanxin continent are gathered there. If everyone knew that young sect master had chosen Bailey Hongzhuang, they would definitely mock young sect master. Hearing Tao Songrong's words, the smile on Han Shiling's face widened. That's right. No matter what, she was much more outstanding than Bailey Hongzhuang. All these years, almost everyone thought that she and Big Brother D were a couple. Now that it was Bailey Hongzhuang who could not compare to her in any way, Big Brother D naturally would not bring Bailey Hongzhuang with him. Speaking of which, Bailey Hongzhuang still thought too highly of herself. In that case, Bailey Hongzhuang is now in Big Brother D's palace? Han Shilling's eyes narrowed. She clearly remembered Bailey Hongzhuang's high and mighty appearance in the discussion hall. She hated that she could not kill Bailey Hongzhuang at the thought of this. She could not wait to kill Bailey Hongzhuang. Big Brother D was. She could not let Bailey Hongzhuang continue being. Tao Songrong nodded her head. It should be, but I heard that young sect master had instructed that no one is allowed to go near his bedroom during this period. As soon as these words came out, Han Shiling's eyes deepened a bit. D. Deja's words are for me to hear. He's so protective of Bailey Hongzhuang. Tao Songrong was a little worried when she saw Han Shiling gnashing her teeth. Miss, don't be angry. Young sect master has only been deceived by Bailey Hongzhuang for a short period of time. Let's go and take a look. Han Shiling's face was full of stubbornness. She did not care about what Di Beichun said. Even if she really went, she did not believe that Big Brother D could do anything to her. But Miss, young sect master has said that no one is allowed to go. Tao Songrong was in a difficult position. So what? Han Shiling sneered. Would Big Brother D kill me for Bailey Hongzhuang? Chapter 11:51. However, Han Shiling ignored Tao Songrong's dissuasion and was very determined. Are you going or not? Seeing that Han Shiling was angry, Tao Songrong did not dare to say anything more and said, I'll go wherever Miss goes. Then let's go. Her voice fell, and Han Shiling had already walked out of the house. Fortunately, her residence was at the back of Tiangang's sect, and there were not many cultivators who came here usually. As for Di Beichun's bedroom, there were even fewer cultivators who appeared near Di Beichun's bedroom. As long as she was careful, she would be able to avoid many cultivators along the way and might not be discovered at all. Along the way, Tao Songrong walked in front and helped Han Shiling to keep an eye on the surrounding situation. Speaking of which, they were really lucky along the way. However, they did not know that not far away, the secret guards sent by Di Beichun to protect Bailey Hongzhuang had already seen everything. Hey Ming, should we stop them? No need. Young sect master only asked us to keep an eye on the surrounding movements. Even if Han Shiling goes over, he won't be able to find Madam. Don't worry. Compared to Han Shiling, Di Beichun was more worried that the two palace masters would harm Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, these two people had stayed in Tiangang's sect for so long, and their abilities could not be underestimated. Han Shiling walked all the way to Di Beichun's bedroom without any obstructions. His originally nervous little face revealed a proud expression the moment he arrived. It turned out that Big Brother D had only said that and did not say anything else. Bailey Hongzhuang. Han Shiling called out, but found that no one answered at all. Seeing this, Han Shiling could not help but frown and immediately turned to Tao Songrong and said, Go and look for her. Tao Songrong quickly nodded. Okay, I'll go look for her now. As Tao Songrong went to look for Bailey Hongzhuang, Han Shiling also went in. Bailey Hongzhuang actually dared to ignore her. Did this woman really think that she was great now? Tao Songrong quickly opened the counter, but there was no sign of Bailey Hongzhuang in the room. At the same time, Han Shiling's situation was the same. Miss, there's no trace of Bailey Hongzhuang in the room. Tao Songrong looked puzzled. Han Shiling also frowned. Bailey Hongzhuang must know that she has no one to rely on after Brother D left, so she's deliberately avoiding me. However, it's not that easy for her to hide from me. Han Shiling looked at Tao Songrong again and said, Continue the search. We must find Bailey Hongzhuang. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang was in this room, she would definitely find her. The three beasts also noticed the movements above. The design of this stone room was very strange. It was impossible to detect the existence of this stone room from upstairs, but from this stone room, one could clearly understand the movements above. That Han Shiling really refuses to give up. Di Beichun just left, and she immediately came looking for him. What a weirdo. Xiaohei could not hide the disgust in her eyes. Now that Han Shiling's true colors had been exposed, everything she had done was disgusting. It's all right. Let her search upstairs. Anyway, she won't be able to find anything, Bailey Hongzhuang said calmly. Han Shiling must be flustered and exasperated now and only wanted to find her to vent her anger. If Han Shiling could not find her, she would probably be even angrier. Chapter 1152. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the three beasties covered their mouths and laughed. The Han Shilling now was really like a headless fly, running around aimlessly. Where was her high and mighty appearance from before? Speaking of which, the image of Han Shilling that everyone used to think was lofty, cold, and elegant was completely fake. Now, this crazy woman Han Shilling was the real her. Bailey Hongzhuang was peacefully cultivating in the stone room. A trace of elemental energy covered her ears, covering all the noises and leaving Han Shilling to go crazy. In reality, everything was just as Bailey Hongzhuang had predicted. Han Shilling and Tao Songrong kept running around Di Beichen's bedroom, and Han Shilling was sure that Bailey Hongzhuang must be hiding, so she didn't give up on searching. If someone were to stand on the roof of Di Beichen's bedroom, they would find Han Shilling and Tao Songrong running around like idiots. It was really funny. Han Shilling stubbornly searched for a long time, but realized that Bailey Hongzhuang was nowhere to be seen. She couldn't help but feel flustered and exasperated. "Miss, there's no sign of Bailey Hongzhuang." Tao Songrong put her hands on her hips, panting heavily. Han Shilling's face was gloomy as a storm of anger swept through her eyes. "Are you sure that Big Brother D left alone?" She had been running around in this bedroom for so long, but she didn't see any trace of Bailey Hongzhuang. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang was hiding from her, there should be some movement. However, after searching for so long, she felt that Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't here at all. Looking at Han Shilling's slightly threatening gaze, Tao Songrong replied nervously, "I saw a young sect master leaving alone with my own eyes, and I didn't see Bailey Hongzhuang by his side. Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang walked in front of you, so you didn't notice?" Han Shilling frowned. She couldn't think of any other possibilities. After all, if Bailey Hongzhuang was really in Tiangang's sect, then it was impossible to go anywhere else except here. Tao Songrong was also puzzled and could only say, "Maybe." Looking at Tao Songrong's ambiguous look, Han Shilling was also furious. Let's go back. Time passed very quickly. Bailey Hongzhuang was quietly cultivating in the stone room, while the three beasties were obediently cultivating on the other side. As they were about to take part in the assessment competition, they naturally had to take part together with their mistress. Their abilities could be raised slightly, and by then, they would be able to help their mistress a little. Bailey Hongzhuang also felt that this was an extremely good opportunity for cultivation, as it greedily absorbed the surrounding elemental energy. The stone room was completely silent, and other than the slight breathing sound, there wasn't any other sound. However, on this night, just as Bailey Hongzhuang was cultivating, suddenly there was a movement from the ground. Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that the mechanism controlling this passageway had been opened by someone, and a light footstep was heard from above. Hearing this slight movement, Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties opened their eyes, and the elemental energy in their bodies surged as they stared intently above. Just by hearing these footsteps, they were able to determine that the person wasn't Di Beichen. Chapter 1153. Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties were ready to attack. Compared to Han Shilling, they believed that another cultivator had arrived. Once this happened, the other party must be an enemy. The stone chamber was completely silent. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was fixed on the top of the passageway. She did not know if the person who had arrived was the palace master or an elder. Not long after, a figure appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties. However, after seeing this figure, Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties were puzzled. This was because they had never seen this person before. He was neither the palace master nor an elder of the Tiangang sect. The person who had arrived was around 50 years old. His face, which had experienced the vicissitudes of life, was benevolent and full of righteousness. He was clearly different from the bad guy that Bailey Hongzhuang had imagined. "Master, this old fellow is very powerful." Xiaohei's voice rang out as a reminder. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with a dignified light. Her heart was also clear. She knew that she had not sensed the slightest bit of elemental energy from the other party's body. Usually, there were only two possibilities in this situation. The first was that the other party was an ordinary person who had never cultivated. The second was that the other party was extremely powerful and had perfectly concealed his aura. Of these two possibilities, Bailey Hongzhuang naturally did not believe that it was the first one. This was because there were no ordinary people in the Tiangang sect. When the old man saw Bailey Hongzhuang, he was shocked. His bright eyes were filled with astonishment. He stared blankly at Bailey Hongzhuang as if he had seen something inconceivable. "Who are you?" The old man took a step forward and grabbed Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders with both hands. His gaze was as sharp as an eagle's and could not be resisted. The old man's sudden action was obviously beyond Bailey Hongzhuang's expectations. Her brows furrowed. She wanted to break free from the old man's grip, but the old man's strength was too great. She couldn't break free. Most importantly, she did not see any killing intent in the old man's eyes. On the contrary, it was an extremely complicated emotion that she could not understand. After knowing that the old man did not intend to kill her, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but ask, "I'm Bailey Hongzhuang. Who are you?" Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's answer, the old man finally understood. He immediately let go of Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder, but his eyes were filled with disappointment. "So you are Bailey Hongzhuang." The old man quickly recovered from his previous state. His weathered face returned to its original benevolence and gentleness. "Beichun, this brat, even told you the secret of the stone room. It seems like he is sincere." Bailey Hongzhuang was stunned for a moment when she heard the old man's words, but she quickly understood what he meant. Her deep phoenix-like eyes were filled with astonishment and surprise. "You're the sect master?" She clearly saw the old man's doting gaze when he talked about Di Beichun. She then recalled that Di Beichun had previously said that only he and the sect master knew about this stone room. In this way, the identity of the old man in front of him was already obvious. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had immediately guessed his identity, Situ Yin smiled faintly. "You're smart." After receiving Situ Yan's affirmation, Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes were filled with joy. She had always wanted to meet Situ Yin, who had raised Di Beichun. She never thought that she would be able to meet him in person so soon. "Greetings, Senior." Chapter 1154. "You're from Fengbo country?" Situ sized up Bailey Hongzhuang. His deep eyes flickered with a complicated light. "That's right." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. There was some worry in her eyes. In fact, she didn't know if Situ cared about her background. She didn't care about what others said, but Situ treated Di Beichun with great kindness. If Situ didn't like her, then she couldn't ignore it. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's answer, Situ's eyes lit up. "I heard that Beichun's wife is from a small dynasty, but I don't know which dynasty it is. So, you two men in Fengbo country?" Bailey Hongzhuang sized up Situ's expression. After seeing that Situ didn't show any displeasure towards her, her tense heart relaxed a little. "Beichun became the prince of Fengbo country. I'm the young miss of the general's residence. We just happen to know each other." "I see." Situ smiled faintly. There was some emotion in his deep eyes. "You look like an old friend of mine." Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised. She immediately understood why Situ had such an expression when he first saw her. "I look like an old friend of Senior's?" Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with doubt. Bailey Hongzhuang's mind was constantly thinking. It was reasonable to say that her mother was also a member of the sect, so she might know Situ. However, from Situ's expression, this old friend should be around the same age as Situ. She shouldn't be her mother. Situ smiled faintly and waved his hand. "It's just that we look alike." Seeing that Situ didn't want to continue this topic, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't insist. There were indeed many people who looked alike in this world. "Beichun went to the Juyun sect. Since he arranged for you to stay here, you should properly cultivate here for the next few days. I've already understood what happened in the conference hall. You performed very well, and I believe in Beichun's judgment." Situ looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with appreciation and approval. Although today was the first time he had seen Bailey Hongzhuang, from the fact that Bailey Hongzhuang had insisted on participating in the assessment, He could see that this little girl was also proud and unyielding. Today, no matter if it was her appearance, temperament, or character, they were all impeccable. On the contrary, the first time he saw Bailey Hongzhuang, he felt a sense of closeness and fondness. This feeling was the love an elder had for a junior. It was very strange, but it did exist. However, today was his first time meeting Bailey Hongzhuang, so he couldn't be too obvious. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good if he scared Bailey Hongzhuang. As soon as he finished speaking, CTN smiled and walked up the passageway. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at CTN's back as he left, and a smile appeared on her pretty face. "Master, this sect leader seems to like you very much." Xiao He went to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Its pair of big eyes looked around excitedly. "I also quite like this sect leader. He's much better than those annoying old guys." Xiao Bai was also very happy. It also knew that its master had always been very worried about Si Tian's opinion of her. Now, Si Tian's attitude was obviously very positive about its master. This was great news. Chapter 1155. His delicate and perfect face was filled with a happy and charming smile, and his pair of narrow and bright phoenix eyes had curved into a crescent moon. Although Si Tian did not say much, Bailey Hongzhuang understood that Si Tian did not have any dissatisfaction because of his identity. On the contrary, he had an appreciative attitude towards her. With Si Tian's identity, there was no need to say any perfunctory words. Since he said so, it proved that he really appreciated her. She always thought that she did not know when she would be able to see Si Tian. She did not expect to see him so early, and under such circumstances. Fortunately, this was not bad. I didn't expect the sovereign to suddenly come back. In this way, the burden on Beichun will be reduced a lot. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly. Si Tian's position in Tiangang's sect was needless to say. He had absolute authority. Previously, Deep Beichun could not stand because of his physique. If it were not for Si Tian not being here, Di Beichun would not be forced to go to Fengbo country. Now that Si Tian was back, Di Beichun's position would be unshakable. Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi really had no chance at this time. When the sovereign comes back, those guys will definitely have to stand aside, Xiao He said with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with a smile. If Di Beichun knew that Si Tian was back, he would be very happy. Originally, she had some worries about the situation of Tiangang's sect, but now it seemed that these worries were unnecessary. All the situations would be changed from the moment Si Tian came back. However, now she just needed to cultivate well. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang once again entered the state of cultivation. When Xia Jiqing and the others followed He Mu to Tiangang's sect, they really saw the means of the big sections. Just looking at the array made them amazed. If He Mu didn't bring them in, they wouldn't have thought that the famous Tiangang sect was sitting here. Xia Jiqing's gaze fell on the white buildings on the high mountain, and her pretty face was full of amazement. That's Tiangang's sect. It's really magnificent. Bai Junyu also sighed as he looked at the building. He had already thought about how amazing this Tiangang sect was. But today, the real situation was even bigger and more spectacular than he imagined. If we can become disciples of the Tiangang sect in the future, that would be great. Dongfang Yu's gentle jade-like face rippled with a faint smile. Such a large sect was truly a holy land in the hearts of all cultivators. As soon as he thought that Di Beichun was the young lord of Tiangang's sect, he understood how big the gap between him and Di Beichun was. It was a gap that he was destined to be unable to cross since birth. Gong Shaoqing did not say a word, but his deep eyes quietly changed. This kind of shock could only be understood when one experienced it personally. "Who are you?" After seeing He Mu and the others, the guards revealed their figures, and their eyes fell on Xia Jiqing and the others behind He Mu. When Xia Jiqing and the others saw the sudden appearance of the two cultivators, they were also surprised. If the two had not taken the initiative to reveal themselves, they would not have known that there were two cultivators nearby. Chapter 1156. I brought them to participate in the assessment under the order of the young sect master. He Mu said. Listening to He Mu's answer, the two disciples looked at each other. They both knew that He Mu was the confidant of the young sect master. Since He Mu said so, it should not be wrong. The two immediately nodded, and their figures swept away, disappearing from the sight of Xia Jiqing and others. Seeing this, Xia Jiqing and others had a look of amazement on their faces. This is the means of the sect. It's really amazing. Listening to everyone's emotions, He Mu smiled and said, "After you participate in the assessment, you will have such strength." Xia Jiqing and others looked at each other, and there was a look of expectation in their eyes. They only hoped that one day they could become so strong. Not long after, everyone walked to Tiangang sect. The cultivators of Tiangang sect looked at the sudden appearance of Xia Jiqing and others, and there was a look of surprise in their eyes. What are these people doing in Tiangang sect? Aren't their cultivations a little too weak? I don't know. Our Tiangang sect is not a place where anyone can casually enter. Isn't the person leading the way at the front the young sect master's shadow guard He Mu? Is this the young sect master's intention? Everyone kept looking at Xia Jiqing and others. With their cultivation, they could see the cultivation of Xia Jiqing and others at a glance. With this kind of cultivation, it was impossible to even set foot in Tiangang sect. They did not understand why this group of people would appear here. It was really strange. Listening to the remarks of the surrounding cultivators, everyone's face was a bit ugly. After all, the surrounding cultivators were stronger than them, and they could feel the contempt of these cultivators for them. You don't have to care about this. You are the friends of the young sect master and madam. They will soon shut up. He Mu explained. The cultivators in the special enrollment class were all friends of madam, so he naturally could not make them feel unhappy. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing waved her hand indifferently. It's okay, we don't care at all. Where there were people, there would be right and wrong. If it were not because they knew Hong Zhuang and Deep Beichun, they would not be here at all. If they were in his shoes, they would probably have the same thoughts if they saw such a group of unfamiliar cultivators. Since they were friends of Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang, they couldn't embarrass Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang. Dongfang Yu and the others nodded in agreement. That's right. Everyone was just talking about it out of curiosity. Seeing that Dongfang Yu and the others were very understanding, He Mu also breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "Young sect master and madam should be in the palace. I'll take you there." As He Mu's voice fell, Xia Jiqing's eyes lit up. She was finally going to see Hong Zhuang. He wondered how Hong Zhuang was doing after not seeing her for a while. The scope of Tiangang sect was very large. Even though they were already in Tiangang sect, it still took a while for everyone to walk to Di Beichun's palace. Miss, He Mu brought a group of unfamiliar cultivators to the young sect master's palace. Tao Tsongrong hurried over to report to Han Shiling after seeing He Mu's group pass by their residence. Listening to Tao Tsongrong's words, Han Shiling couldn't help but be startled, her eyebrows slightly wrinkled. A group of strangers? Chapter 11:57. Han Shiling raised her eyebrows slightly, and her lips curled into a sneer. Let's go take a look. He Mu had always been working for Big Brother D, but now he was leading a group of strange cultivators to Big Brother D's palace. Han Shiling just thought for a moment, and she was sure that these cultivators must be Bailey Hongzhuang's friends. After all, Big Brother D did not have many friends, and those friends were all prominent people. It was absolutely impossible for them to be strangers, let alone a group of them. Yes, Tao Tsongrong responded. As they got closer and closer to Di Beichun's palace, everyone also relaxed a little. Originally, they were being looked at by the cultivators of Tiangang sect, and they were still a little nervous. Now that there was no one else around, they were relieved. In front of us is the young sect master's palace. He Mu smiled and introduced to everyone. Everyone immediately looked to the front. Only the bedchamber was the most conspicuous. Di Beichun is really amazing. Living in such a big palace alone, this is simply a treatment that even the emperor does not have. By Junyu's side, this was really unattainable. Then we could still have such a friend. This is really lucky. Cui Haoyan smiled. However, just as everyone was about to enter the bedroom, An untimely and cold voice rang out behind them. This is the young sect master's palace. No one else is allowed to enter. Listening to this sudden voice, Xia Jiqing and the others turned around and saw a woman they didn't know. However, when they saw Han Shilling behind this woman, they had already reacted. Although they did not have much contact with Han Shilling, they could determine that Han Shilling was Bailey Hongzhuang's enemy. As a result, this Han Shilling was their enemy. Miss Han Shilling. He Mu looked at Han Shilling. Young sect master sent me to invite Miss Xia and the others back. Han Shilling nodded slightly, her cold and proud face without any emotion. I know, but when Big Brother D left, he already said that no one is allowed to enter his palace. So, you can't enter either. He Mu frowned slightly, but his tone was neither servile nor overbearing. Miss Han, young sect master had instructed me to bring them to find Madam. Madam is in the bedroom, so I naturally have to bring them in. They are not within young sect master's boundaries, so I hope young Miss Han can forgive them. Ever since young sect master had asked him to draw a clear line with Han Shilling, he had already understood the hostile relationship between Miss Han and Madam. Just from Miss Han's current appearance, he could tell that Miss Han was deliberately looking for trouble. Under such circumstances, he naturally couldn't back down. Hearing He Mu's direct words, Han Shilling's eyes flashed with coldness. I don't know what you're talking about. I only know that Big Brother D specially instructed me to do this before he left. Since it was Big Brother D's order, they naturally could not disobey. You guys should just wait outside. If some random people go in and lose something, then it will be hard to explain. Han Shilling's lips curled into a sneer. She recognized that these guys were the group of cultivators from the Kanglan College with Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 1158. Han Shilling, what do you mean by that? Xia Jiqing's pretty face was full of anger. She had long been unhappy with Han Shilling. She didn't expect that Han Shilling would say something so excessive. If it was anyone else, it would be impossible for them to hold back their anger. Han Shilling sneered as he stared at Xia Jiqing. I've already said it so clearly, yet you still don't understand what I mean? It seems that the cultivators of the Azure Water School are also a group of stupid guys. Looking at Han Shilling's disdainful and mocking attitude, everyone's face was gloomy. They looked at Han Shilling with eyes full of disgust. Are you deliberately looking for trouble? Dongfang Yu's gentle, jade-like face was covered with a layer of coldness. This kind of woman who looked high and mighty on the surface was just like a proud peacock. Perhaps in the eyes of others, she was full of infinite charm, but in his eyes, this kind of woman didn't have the slightest bit of femininity. Listening to Dongfang Yu's words, Han Shilling's disdainful smile widened a bit. Looking for trouble? Why don't you take a look at what grade you are? Are you worthy of me looking for trouble? You really are worthy of being Bailey Hongzhuang's friends. You're just as self-righteous as her. Ridiculous. As Han Shilling's voice fell, everyone could no longer suppress the anger in their hearts. Han Shilling, don't go too far. He Mu listened to Han Shilling's words, and his brows furrowed tighter. The previous Han Shilling was not so excessive. At least on the surface, he still had a calm appearance. He didn't think that Han Shilling would have such an attitude after coming back this time. This aggressive appearance really made people feel disgusted. Miss Han, they're all friends of the young master and madam. It's inappropriate for you to speak like this. He Mu's voice was cold. No matter what, Han Shilling's attitude was too inappropriate. Listening to He Mu's words, Tao Songrong also stood up and said, He Mu, you are just a shadow guard. How dare you speak to the young miss like this? Apologize to Miss right now. Tao Songrong looked at He Mu with her head held high. She felt that He Mu was siding with an outsider. In this kind of situation, he should listen to Mrs. Arrangements. However, He Mu coldly said, I am the young sect master's secret guard. I only listen to the young sect master's orders. I will not listen to anyone else. Tao Songrong was stunned. She did not expect He Mu to say such words. Han Shilling's face was as gloomy as water. He looked at Darkwood with displeasure. You mean you won't listen to me either? Miss Han, as young sect master's secret guard, I will naturally only listen to young sect master's orders. After Xia Jiqing and the others saw that He Mu could be so tough in the face of Han Shilling, Their eyes couldn't help but reveal a light of amazement. Speaking of which, Han Shiling's actions today were completely to cause trouble for them. Fortunately, Mu was firm enough. In this case, Big Brother D had already given this order when he left. Are you going to openly defy Big Brother D's orders? Han Shiling's lips were slightly hooked. Suddenly, he changed the topic. Or in your opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang's orders are more important than Big Brother D's orders? Hey, aren't you being too unreasonable? Xia Jiqing looked at Han Shiling with disgust. This woman was simply indiscriminate. She could imagine that Hong Zhuang's time in Tiangang's sect was not easy. With such an annoying woman here, it was impossible not to be angry. Chapter 1159. He Ming and the others also came over after seeing the movement outside. Miss Han, the young sect master, told us before he left that as long as Madam's friends come, we should let them in directly. He Mu nodded when he saw He Ming and the others. They were all the young sect master shadow guards, and usually only listened to the young sect master's arrangements. Suddenly seeing the appearance of He Ming and the others, Han Shiling's expression also changed. She didn't know that He Ming and the others were here before. So, didn't He Ming and the others see her entering the palace before? Thinking of this, Han Shiling's face became even more ugly. Big Brother D's move was simply to guard against her. Seeing this, Xia Jiqing and the others also looked at Han Shiling with a chuckle. They wanted to see what Han Shiling could say in this case. Noticing the look of Xia Jiqing and the others, Han Shiling's eyes flashed with coldness. She immediately said, I don't know what you are talking about. No matter what, as long as Big Brother D doesn't come back, no one else can go in. He Mu frowned. The previous Han Shiling was not so unreasonable. Miss Han, this, without waiting for He Mu to finish speaking, Han Shiling had already interrupted her directly. If you think what I said is wrong, I can invite the 4 hall masters to judge. Seeing that Han Shiling's attitude was so firm, He Mu, He Ming, and the others looked at each other. This situation was a bit difficult to handle. As the shadow guards of the young sect master, they also had a certain understanding of the situation of the young sect master. 2 of the 4 hall masters were against the young sect master. The most important thing was that once this kind of thing was made big, it was not a good thing. After all, the young sect master had brought Madam back before, and now he had invited Madam's friends back. Originally, this was not a big deal, but once someone used it as a pretext, the problem became big. Han Shiling crossed her arms over her chest, her expression arrogant and her eyes cold. A few mere shadow guards dared to provoke her. She wanted to see who was more powerful. Xia Jiqing and the others looked at each other. They didn't expect that someone would appear out of nowhere. This was troublesome. They didn't know much about Tiangang's sect situation, but from He Mu and the others' expressions, they could tell that the matter wasn't so easy to solve. Bailey Hongzhuang was cultivating in the stone room when Xiao Hei's voice suddenly rang out, Master, there's movement outside. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang opened her eyes. What's going on? Xia Jiqing and the others are here, but there seems to be a dispute. Let's go out and have a look. Xiao Hei rubbed its head. Its spiritual power was very strong. Even if it was very far away, it could still sense the movements. However, the isolation of the stone room was also very good. It could only roughly understand what was going on. Knowing that Xia Jiqing had come, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes couldn't help but light up. However, after knowing that there was a dispute, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but frown. It seemed that Xia Jiqing and the others had come back before Beichen. Bailey Hongzhuang picked up Baishir with one hand, while Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai jumped directly onto Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder. 1 person and 3 beasts immediately went out. Even if she didn't see it with her own eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang could already judge the general situation. In this case, he was afraid that there was no second person besides Han Shiling who was looking for trouble. Chapter 1160. When Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the palace, she saw such a scene. He Mu and others were in a deadlock with Han Shiling, and Han Shiling's overbearing appearance was even more disgusting. Hongzhuang. Seeing Hongzhuang appear, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but call out with joy. Since the last time Hongzhuang left, They hadn't seen her for a long time. Jiqing, with a happy smile on her delicate and perfect face, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly walked to Xia Jiqing's side. Zhang Yinfeng and others looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, and a joyful smile appeared on their faces. After not seeing Bailey Hongzhuang for so long, they only felt very surprised. However, the current situation was obviously not the time to catch up. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at He Mu and Han Xiling. What happened? Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang come out of the palace, Han Xiling and Tao Tsongrong couldn't help but be stunned, their eyes filled with an incredible light. Previously, they had been looking for Bailey Hongzhuang in the palace for a long time, but they hadn't seen Bailey Hongzhuang. They thought that Bailey Hongzhuang had left with Di Beichun, but they didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang was really in the palace. It was just that they hadn't been able to find her. How could this be? Han Xiling couldn't understand. She had previously searched every corner of the palace, but she didn't find the slightest breath that belonged to Bailey Hongzhuang. Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang's hiding ability was so strong that even she was deceived? Thinking of this, Han Xiling was not willing to admit it all. Madam, He Mu, He Ming, and the others bowed when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang. From the moment Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun got married, Bailey Hongzhuang had already become their wife. Other than young sect master's words, they only listened to Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing He Mu again, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. Thank you for your hard work. It's my honor to be able to work for young master and madam. Han Xiling's eyes flashed with a crazy light of jealousy when he saw how obedient Darkwood and the others were to Bailey Hongzhuang. She simply couldn't believe what she was seeing. He Mu and the others were actually so respectful to Bailey Hongzhuang. This was completely different from how they treated her before. Tao Tsongrong's face was also filled with astonishment. She knew that He Mu, He Ming, and the others only listened to young sect master's orders and would not listen to anyone else's orders. In the past, the only person who could make He Mu and the others slightly more obedient was Han Xiling. However, even then, He Mu and the others had never been so obedient. It was only when they faced Bailey Hongzhuang that they were completely convinced. This was simply impossible. Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang already had such a reputation in the hearts of He Mu and the others? What happened? Bailey Hongzhuang asked again, but her gaze had already turned towards Han Xiling. Obviously, Han Xiling was deliberately looking for trouble. Reporting to Madam, Miss Han said that young sect master had said before he left that no one was allowed to enter the bedchamber. Hence, he is not allowing us to enter now. He Mu reported truthfully. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a trace of ridicule. Looks like this Han Xiling was really at his wit's end and could only come up with such meaningless reasons. Han Xiling stared coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang. Her reasons were completely valid, and she wanted to see what ability Bailey Hongzhuang had to change this situation. Chapter 1161. Xia Jiqing and the others looked at Bailey Hongzhuang worriedly. This Han Xiling was not a good guy to provoke. If he didn't already have a certain trump card, they believed that Han Xiling would not do this. However, in the face of Han Xiling's provocation, Bailey Hongzhuang did not look at him and directly said to everyone, "Let's go in." As soon as her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang directly turned around, as if she did not see the existence of Han Xiling. Seeing this, Xia Jiqing and the others could not help but be startled. However, they naturally listened to Bailey Hongzhuang's arrangement and immediately turned around together with Bailey Hongzhuang and walked towards the palace. He Mu, He Ming, and the others were naturally no exception. Since the young sect master was not there, they would listen to the orders of the madam. As for the others, no matter who they were, they would not pay attention to them. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang directly ignoring his existence, Han Xiling's face became gloomy in an instant, his eyes full of resentment and disgust. "Stop," Han Xiling said angrily. However, in the face of Han Xiling's threatening words, Bailey Hongzhuang did not seem to hear it and did not even stop her footsteps. Seeing this, Han Xiling could not hold back. His figure flashed and directly blocked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. His delicate and cold face was full of anger. "I'm talking to you." Did you not hear me? So what if I heard you? So what if I didn't hear you? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. I said, before Big Brother D comes back, no one can enter Big Brother D's palace. Han Shiling's voice was hoarse, and his words were decisive. Bailey Hongzhuang's hands were crossed over her chest, her eyes unscrupulously looking at Han Shiling. Her beautiful pink lips were curved in a mocking arc, and the words she spoke were full of ridicule and contempt. I say, don't you feel bored after singing a one-man show for so long? She just couldn't understand why Han Shiling was still so stubborn despite everything that had happened in the conference hall. What do you mean? Han Shiling's eyes were dark and cold. Bailey Hongzhuang's confident look was an eyesore to her. I thought that a cold and arrogant person like you would have a strong sense of self-esteem. After such a direct and clean rejection, you should know how to avoid it. But now, it seems that I have overestimated your self-esteem. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes flickered with a cold light. Her words were not polite at all. This Han Shiling kept finding trouble for her. She was afraid that if she didn't make it clear, this woman wouldn't understand what she was saying. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were like a sharp knife stabbing into Han Shiling's heart. Everyone understood what Bailey Hongzhuang was trying to say. That is, Han Shiling is shameless. Any woman with a little bit of shame would not behave like this after being rejected, but Han Shiling was still so unrelenting in finding trouble. Han Shiling felt as if she had been slapped by Bailey Hongzhuang in public. Her expression was extremely ugly and her eyes were burning with anger. She wanted nothing more than to kill Bailey Hongzhuang. However, before Bailey Hongzhuang could say anything, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice rang out again. I want to bring them in. No matter what the consequences are, I will take responsibility. Chapter 1162. If you want to find the great elder to judge, then it's up to you. As soon as her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang directly passed by Han Shiling in front of her and walked in the direction of the palace. Before, Han Shiling had made things difficult for her, but now she dared to put on such an attitude towards her friends. It was really unbearable. At this point, Han Shiling had no other way. Even if she really found the great elder, it wouldn't change anything. Once things got out of hand, Han Shiling would be the one who would be embarrassed in the end. He Mu, Xia Jiqing, and others also followed closely behind Bailey Hongzhuang, passing by Han Shiling and Tao Tsongrong. For this woman, they now only had disgust. Xia Jiqing and Zhang Yunfeng looked at each other. Their faces were full of amazement. They didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be so domineering when she appeared. Thinking back to when they were in the Luoyun Mountains, Han Shiling's arrogant appearance was completely contemptuous of Hongzhuang. Now, in just a short time, the situation had completely changed. Thinking of how Han Shiling was angered by Bailey Hongzhuang to the point of gnashing her teeth, where was the original fairy-like posture? When Han Shiling saw Bailey Hongzhuang walking in front of her, she almost broke her teeth. Damn it, Han Shiling said angrily. This Bailey Hongzhuang really didn't put her in her eyes at all. Miss, this Bailey Hongzhuang is too arrogant. If we don't deal with her well, she will really be lawless in the future. Tao Tsongrong was also angry. She had never seen anyone in Tian Gang sect who dared to speak to the Miss like this. This Bailey Hongzhuang was simply too arrogant. She'll know sooner or later that she's nothing. Han Shiling clenched her fists. Her murderous aura surged like a storm in her heart. She would never give Bailey Hongzhuang the chance to continue being arrogant in front of her. Looking at Han Shiling's furious expression, Tao Tsongrong didn't dare to say anything more. She believed that Miss would definitely have a way to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang. It wasn't until everyone came to the vicinity of Di Beichen's palace that the originally tense people relaxed a little. Madam, since Lady Xia and the others have arrived, I shall take my leave first. Heimu bowed to Bailey Hongzhuang and said respectfully. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and smiled. You must be tired from the long journey. Go back and have a good rest. Thank you, madam. After Heimu, Heiming, and the others left, Xia Jiqing was the first to approach Bailey Hongzhuang. Hongzhuang, you were so domineering just now. That Han Shiling was simply angered to death by you. Yes, I really can't connect this Han Shiling with the previous Han Shiling. The contrast is too big. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. She's now at her wit's end. It's been hard on you. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing waved her hand indifferently. What's this? When I think of Xia Jiqing's appearance just now, I feel a burst of joy. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the refreshing Xia Jiqing and the smile in her eyes deepened. I haven't seen you for a while, but your temperament hasn't changed at all. Hongzhuang, I haven't seen you for so long. I missed you so much. Chapter 1163. Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Xia Jiqing, who were hugging each other, and their faces showed a happy smile. During the time when Bailey Hongzhuang left, Xia Jiqing had been missing Hongzhuang very much. They could feel this kind of longing. If Xia Jiqing hadn't insisted on waiting for Hongzhuang at the school, they wouldn't have had the opportunity to come to Tiangang's sect. Speaking of which, they had to thank Xia Jiqing. Hongzhuang, you spent a lot of time going out to gain experience this time. I feel that your cultivation seems to have improved a lot. Dongfang, you looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. When he first met Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was not as good as his. After a year of cultivation, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength had surpassed his. He remembered that when they had just separated, although Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was stronger than his, he could still judge how much stronger she was compared to him. However, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang now, he couldn't judge at all. He couldn't feel any aura at all. With this point alone, he could be sure that Bailey Hongzhuang had improved a lot during this time. As Dongfang Yu's voice fell, everyone's eyes condensed on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. They were all very curious about how much improvement Di Beichen had brought Bailey Hongzhuang out to gain experience. Yes, Hongzhuang, what's your cultivation now? Xia Jiqing asked curiously. During this time, she had been working hard at the school to cultivate and didn't waste any time. Her progress was very pleasing. In fact, it wasn't just her. The entire special enrollment class cultivators had made great progress. Feeling everyone's curiosity, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and said, My current cultivation is Orange Realm Level 1. With the improvement of her strength, the effect of the demon summoning scripture was also reflected. Presently, other than when she utilized her origin energy, other people were completely unable to discern her cultivation. However, with Bailey Hongzhuang's voice falling, Xia Jiqing and the others present all looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in a daze. They couldn't believe what they had heard. What did you say? Orange. Level 1? Did I hear that right? Everyone couldn't help but open their mouths wide. This news was too shocking. Although they had already imagined that Di Beichen would bring Bailey Hongzhuang out to train, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength would definitely increase by a lot. This speed of improvement was simply too fast. This was simply torturing them to death. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. You didn't hear wrong. It's true. They were all her friends, so there was no need for her to hide anything. What's more, they were all going to participate in the assessment competition together. They were companions whose lives depended on each other. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang speaking seriously, even if everyone felt that this idea was too difficult to accept, they also understood that this was the truth. Bailey Hongzhuang was a cultivation genius. They simply couldn't compare with Bailey Hongzhuang. They were completely looking for trouble. Originally, I was quite happy with the progress of my cultivation. Now that I know your strength, I don't feel the slightest bit of happiness. It's really too much of a blow. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but shake her head and sigh. It was too difficult for her to close the gap between her and Hongzhuang's strength. Comparisons are odious. Bai Junyu sighed. Chapter 1164. After not seeing each other for a long time, everyone was chatting, and it was very lively. After some greetings, everyone also visited Di Beichen's palace. They had never had such treatment. Hongzhuang, fortunately you didn't marry Xianyuan Huan, huh? Xia Jiqing looked at Di Beichen's palace and couldn't help but sigh. Xianyuan Huan and Di Beichen were simply clouds and mud. If Hongzhuang really married Xianyuan Huan, it would be a big loss. Listening to Xia Jiqing's words, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. Many things in the world were so coincidental. If it weren't for Xianyuan Huan breaking off the engagement, there wouldn't be so many things happening later. Thinking about it, she might not exist in this world. Tian Gangzong's young lord's wife. In the future, she will be Tian Gangzong's wife. This identity is enough to make people look up to her. Zhang Yunfeng's eyes showed envy. This kind of good fortune was really not something that anyone could have. Right, where did Di Beichen go? Shui Haoyan couldn't help but ask. They had heard from Han Xiling that Di Beichen had left, but they still didn't know where Di Beichen went. He went to discuss the assessment with the other sections. He should be back soon. Her ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with smiles. Seeing this group of friends again, Bailey Hongzhuang's mood was also very good. When they knew that Di Beichen had gone to discuss the assessment, everyone only felt that the gap was becoming more and more obvious. They still didn't know if they were eligible to participate in the assessment, but Di Beichen had already become the organizer of the assessment. This was simply, everyone should be tired from rushing all the way here. Beichen and I have prepared a place for you to stay. Everyone should rest first. Bailey Hongzhuang's clear and bright eyes were filled with the light of concern. Her voice was gentle. The distance from Tsanglan School to Tiangangzhong was not short. Upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone nodded in agreement. They had hardly stopped to rest during their journey here. Not only that, before arriving at Tiangang Sect, their mood was extremely excited, but now after relaxing, they only felt a burst of exhaustion and really needed a good rest. Seeing the exhaustion on everyone's faces, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately led everyone to the back room. Di Beichen's palace was extremely large, so it wouldn't be a problem even if everyone stayed there. Logically speaking, they should be staying in the guest residential area, but Han Xiling obviously wouldn't give up so easily. If they stayed outside, it would cause a lot of trouble. It was precisely because of this that she and Di Beichen made this decision after discussing it for a while. Soon, everyone returned to their respective rooms. Bailey Hongzhuang and Xia Jiqing walked into the room together. Hongzhuang, I think that Han Xiling is very fierce. Have you been bullied by her when you lived here? As soon as she entered the room, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but ask. When she thought of Xia Jiqing's overbearing appearance, she knew that she wasn't easy to get along with. Hongzhuang only had Di Beichen to protect her in Tiangangzhong. Although she had never seen it with her own eyes, she also knew that with Hongzhuang's identity as the young lord of Tiangangzhong, it would inevitably cause a lot of opposition. Chapter 1165. Xia Jiqing took a deep look at Bailey Hongzhuang. After confirming that Bailey Hongzhuang was telling the truth and did not hide anything, she was relieved. That's good. I always feel that Han Xiling is not a guy who is easy to deal with. Xia Jiqing curled her lips. Affinity was a very strange thing. When she first saw Bailey Hongzhuang, she felt very congenial. And when she first saw Han Xiling, she felt a burst of disgust. Even if he is difficult to deal with, it doesn't matter because I'm even more difficult to deal with. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's joking appearance, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but laugh. That's right, you're a person who never suffers a loss. Hongzhuang's character has always been that if people respect her, she will respect them tenfold. This was the same as her opponent. Hongzhuang, where did you go to train during this time? Xia Jiqing curled her lips. After that, there was no news of you. We were worried that you would not come back. I will definitely go back, but this time the situation is very complicated. The location is very far away, and it is not convenient to send messages. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. She knew that Xia Jiqing really cared about her. We went to the bloody ground abyss this time. With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice falling, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but widen her eyes filled with an incredible color. Bloody ground abyss. One of the three abyss? The bloody ground abyss was so famous that she naturally heard of it, but she didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to go to this place. According to the information she learned, the bloody ground abyss was a gathering place for demons. Many cultivators once went in and never came back. Many cultivators regarded the bloody ground abyss as an excellent place to improve their strength. But for more cultivators, everything inside was no different from scourges and beasts. They were absolutely unwilling to go to such a place. Many cultivators who went there lost their humanity and completely fell. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Not bad. You guys are too bold. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but exclaim. She finally understood why Hong Zhuang took so long to come back. Just how far was the blood-ground abyss? Just traveling there would take a long time, and it was filled with danger. He was afraid that under such circumstances, Hong Zhuang and the others would be wholeheartedly focused on their cultivation and would not consider other things at all. It's all right. Didn't I come back safe and sound? Bailey Hong Zhuang's expression was indifferent. When she first learned about the blood-ground abyss, she was very interested and didn't think of anything else. However, from the reactions of the others, she understood that many people did not accept the existence of the blood-ground abyss. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing nodded. Indeed, as long as you come back safely. At this moment, Xia Jiqing completely understood. No wonder Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation could improve so much in such a short time. In such a dangerous place, it would be difficult for him not to improve quickly, although the extent of this improvement was still somewhat abnormal. After the two lay on the soft couch and chatted for a long time, Xia Jiqing gradually fell asleep, and Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the house. Chapter 1166. Xiaohe was very curious. Logically speaking, the news of Sita Yan's return was a big deal, and the entire Tiangang sect should be in an uproar. However, Tiangang sect had been calm for the past 2 days, as if nothing had happened. It was really strange. Sect Master can't have left again, right? Xiaobai was stunned. If the sect master left again, it would be too difficult to accept. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head with a wise and far-sighted look in her eyes. Her voice was full of certainty. The sect master has just returned and can't leave immediately. It's just that the sect master has never appeared in front of everyone. Perhaps the sect master is waiting for Di Beiqian to return. With the sect master's love for Di Beiqian and his rare return, and knowing that so many things had happened in Tiangang sect, it was impossible for him to leave without seeing Di Beiqian. On the contrary, the sect master should not leave for a while. Master is right. I think the sect master should have successfully broken through this time. He looks to be around 50 years old, but his real age is definitely more than that, Xiaobai said immediately. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a faint light. When cultivators reached a certain age, once their strength broke through, their appearance would also recover some of their youth. This was especially true for powerful existences like the masters of aristocratic families and sections. Their strength was definitely not comparable to ordinary cultivators. Similarly, their lifespan would also be much longer than ordinary cultivators. One might look 50 years old, but in fact, it was possible to be 60 or 70 years old or even older. This was the charm of cultivation. Many cultivators desperately cultivated in pursuit of immortality. Only after reaching that level could they understand the true meaning of life. If that's the case, then it's really good news. Her exquisite and alluring face revealed a clear and moving smile. Her already outstanding face was now even more charming and unforgettable. When Di Beiqian returned to his bedroom, he saw Bailey Hongzhuang in such a state. His incomparably handsome face was filled with a trace of intoxication and admiration. "Wife, you seem to be in a good mood." Di Beiqian quietly appeared behind Bailey Hongzhuang and wrapped his arms around her slender waist. The fragrance of Bailey Hongzhuang's body wafted into his nose, making him infatuated. When Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that there was someone behind her, she was extremely tense. However, after smelling that familiar scent, her tense body relaxed, and she allowed Di Beiqian to embrace her. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile widened. "That's natural. Everyone's already here." Di Beiqian naturally understood what Bailey Hongzhuang was talking about. When he saw He Mu, he already knew that all the cultivators from the special enrollment class had arrived. "I've returned a little late. Has Han Xiling come looking for trouble again?" Di Beiqian frowned. When he had heard He Ming's report, he had understood what had happened during his absence. It looked like he had made the right choice by allowing Hong Zhuang to cultivate in the stone room. Otherwise, a head-on confrontation would have been unavoidable. Come to think of it, he never thought that Han Xiling would actually refuse to listen to his advice. He had already made his intentions very clear, but Han Shilling had only agreed on the surface, but opposed on the inside. Chapter 1167. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood his thoughts, Di Beichun praised in his heart, "My wife is really smart. Now that she is at her wit's end, she can't think a way to deal with me, so she's messing around like this. You can do whatever you want as long as she doesn't provoke me. If she provokes me, I won't be polite." Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged, her expression indifferent and calm. She understood why Di Beichun was put in a difficult position. The Great Elder's position in Tiangang's sect was extremely stable, and Han Shilling was the Great Elder's granddaughter. For the time being, he could only punish Han Shilling, but he couldn't expel Han Shilling. After all, the first problem that Di Beichun had to solve was the two palace masters, Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi. As for the others, they had to be put aside for the time being. As the clan master of an aristocratic family in her previous life, she was very clear about this situation, so she naturally wouldn't make things difficult for Di Beichun. This was because she believed in Di Beichun. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichun also understood Bailey Hongzhuang's support for him, and his heart was moved. Immediately, his hands that hugged Bailey Hongzhuang tightened, wishing that he could directly knead Bailey Hongzhuang into his bones. "My wife, I love you." A low, hoarse, and magnetic voice rang in Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. Her originally indifferent and wanton figure unconsciously stiffened, and her beautiful face was boiling hot. These three words always had an indescribable charm, and when these words came from Di Beichun's mouth, it made people even more addicted and unable to extricate themselves. Feeling the change in Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichun couldn't help but stand in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Her blushing face added a trace of feminine charm. "My wife, until now you have never called me husband. Why don't you call me that?" Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly startled. Even though she had already determined that Di Beichun was the person that she would hold for the rest of her life, she really couldn't bring herself to say those two words. "My wife, just call me that once." Di Beichun stretched out a finger and winked at Bailey Hongzhuang, his expression revealing a bit of desire. "I won't." Bailey Hongzhuang turned her body, with her back facing Di Beichun. She really couldn't stand Di Beichun's teasing. "Just once, I won't tell anyone." Di Beichun's smile widened. He really wanted to hear it. "I won't. My wife, just once." "Wife, your husband wants to hear it." "Hongzha husband." As a soft voice sounded, Di Beichun looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise, his handsome face revealing an indescribable surprise. "My wife, what did you just say?" Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Di Beichun. She had already said it. "My wife, can you say it again?" Di Beichun held Bailey Hongzhuang's hands tightly, his starry eyes shining brightly, like a bright galaxy, gorgeous and full of charm. Bailey Hongzhuang originally wanted to glare at Di Beichun and ignore him, but after seeing the joy and desire in Di Beichun's eyes, her heart couldn't help but move. "Husband." This time, Di Beichun heard it clearly. He immediately hugged Bailey Hongzhuang excitedly and spun in circles on the spot. "Ha ha!" In the garden, Di Beichun's unbridled laughter spread. All the flowers could feel his joy. Chapter 1168. Di Beichun, who was hugging Bailey Hongzhuang, felt as if he had the entire world in his hands. That kind of joy and satisfaction was something they had never seen before. After a long while, Di Beichun finally put Bailey Hongzhuang down. Bailey Hongzhuang blushed as she looked helplessly at Di Beichun. "Everyone is here. Aren't you going to wake everyone up like this?" However, Di Beichun didn't seem to mind at all. They would be happy to see this. Looking at Di Beichun's shameless manner, Bailey Hongzhuang felt helpless. She had long seen that this guy was a scoundrel by nature, just like how he had directly latched onto her in the past. However, this was her scoundrel style. "All right, Beichun, I want to tell you something." Bailey Hongzhuang stopped teasing him and became serious. "After you left, I saw the sovereign." She had to tell Di Beichun about this news first, because Di Beichun had always been concerned about the whereabouts of the sovereign and was worried about the sovereign's recent situation. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichun couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. His deep and handsome eyes were filled with indescribable shock. "What did you say?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded affirmatively. "I'm telling the truth." "Where did you see him?" Di Beichen's expression turned serious. In these 4 years, he didn't have the slightest bit of news about his master. He didn't expect that Hongzhuang would actually see him. "When I was cultivating in the stone room, someone suddenly came in. I was worried that it would be someone else. I didn't expect it to be the sovereign. However, the sovereign didn't seem to have appeared in front of anyone. Everyone didn't know that the sovereign had returned." Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged her shoulders. She didn't know what the sectmaster was thinking. However, she believed that since Di Beichen had returned, the sovereign would definitely meet with Di Beichen. She was certain of this. Di Beichen frowned slightly. He naturally knew that what Hongzhuang said could not be false. As long as Master was back, it was a good thing. As long as Master returns, he will definitely meet me. Di Beichen smiled faintly. It seemed that the situation was getting better. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "That's right. You should go back to your room first. Maybe the sect leader is waiting for you." Bailey Hongzhuang said. "Okay," Di Beichen replied. Now, he had a lot of evidence. Since his master was back, it would be easier to deal with all these problems. At night, Di Beichen prepared good wine and delicacies to entertain the cultivators of the special enrollment class. They were all classmates. Now that they were gathered in Tiangang sect, the atmosphere was even happier. "Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, thank you for inviting us to Tiangang sect to participate in the assessment together. I toast you." Xia Jiqing raised her glass. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen smiled at each other and immediately picked up their wine glasses. "Speaking of which, I'm grateful that you can come. With you and Hongzhuang participating in the assessment competition together, I can be more at ease." Di Beichen smiled and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with eyes full of affection. "Hongzhuang, I have one thing I don't understand. Since you have already come to Tiangang sect, why do you still want to participate in the assessment competition?" Zhang Yinfeng couldn't help but ask the doubts in her heart. She always felt that such a move was a bit superfluous. Chapter 1169. Cui Haoyin also looked at Zhang Yinfeng. In his opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't participate in the assessment if she wasn't forced into a corner. Looking at the changing expressions of the crowd, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't mind at all and smiled, to be more justified. As soon as these words came out, everyone understood what was going on. Previously, they had neglected the pressure that Bailey Hongzhuang had to endure when she was with Di Beichen. All the girls were very envious of Bailey Hongzhuang's luck to be liked by Di Beichen. However, they had never thought about the things that they had to pay in order to stand by Di Beichen's side. Zhang Yinfeng also understood that her question was inappropriate and immediately said, "Hongzhuang." Looking at Zhang Yunfeng's anxious expression, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and waved her hand. "It's nothing. I think that the assessment is an excellent opportunity to gain experience. You can see the outstanding cultivators from all over the world. Only with competition can you improve." She originally wanted to participate in the assessment because the assessment was a touchstone. She had to improve her cultivation as soon as possible. Chapter 1170. Everyone listened attentively to Di Beichen's introduction. In fact, if they hadn't entered the special enrollment class of the Azure Water School, they wouldn't have had the opportunity to participate in this assessment. Although this assessment is an assessment, it takes a very long time. It will take 2 years. As we all know, there are many monsters in the Shengxian continent. A few hundred years ago, there was a monster riot. At that time, the humans suffered a very serious attack and were almost killed by the monsters. Hearing this, everyone's eyes condensed on Di Beichen. They all knew about the monster riot a few hundred years ago, but they didn't know what this monster riot had to do with the assessment. In fact, there were so many monsters that the humans couldn't deal with. So some peerless powerhouses deliberately created a small world and placed the monsters in it. However, the reproduction ability of the monsters is very amazing. Our human powerhouses found that these monsters were constantly reproducing in the small world. Their power is constantly trying to break the seal of the small world. Once they succeed in breaking the seal, they will appear in the Shengxian continent again and cause great damage to the human race. Debachen's voice was a bit heavy. There was a certain amount of risk in every opportunity. With Debachen's voice falling, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood. You mean that the place where we participate in the assessment is a small world full of monsters? Debachen couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. His wife was really clever, understanding with just a hint. Yes, if we participate in the assessment, we can help kill these monsters. On one hand, we can solve a hidden danger in the Shengxian continent. On the other hand, we can let the major sects understand our strength and recruit disciples. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a smile. This is really an excellent assessment method, killing two birds with one stone. Xia Jiqing and the others also understood, but they couldn't help but open their mouths. They never thought that the assessment would be like this. Where's that small world? Bai Junyu only felt incredulous. Does this mean that there's another place in our Shengxian continent that's occupied by demonic beasts? It's just that we don't usually see it? Looking at Bai Junyu's confused expression, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but explain. Space is a very mysterious power. Some powerful cultivators can use their own strength to construct a space that belongs only to them. You can think of it this way. That small world is like a spatial crack drifting outside the Shengxian continent, and that seal is the place where the small world and the Shengxian continent meet. Once those demonic beasts break through the seal, they will appear in the Shengxian continent. That will be a terrifying disaster. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with wisdom. After learning about the existence of this small world, she understood the need for the assessment competition that was held once every 5 years. The so-called small world was simply a battlefield. I see. Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in amazement. They didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to know about this kind of thing. She was really amazing. Chapter 1171. Yes, just like what Hongzhuang said. Debachen nodded. So, if we participate in the assessment, we will be going to the small world to kill monster beasts. Xia Jiqing swallowed a mouthful of saliva. According to Debachen's words, the small world was completely a nest of monster beasts. Yes, so participating in the assessment will also be very risky. You also know the strength of the monster beasts. It is definitely not easy to live in a place full of monster beasts for 2 years. In every assessment, the number of cultivators who fall in the small world is a large number. Therefore, you also have to think about whether you want to participate in the assessment. Debachen looked at the crowd. Although the assessment was an excellent opportunity for all cultivators, it was very risky. Once you entered, you may never be able to come out. Therefore, everyone should consider whether they want to go or not. After all, once you participate, there will be no chance for regret. He never felt that there was any problem with not participating in the assessment. Life itself was the most important. If you don't have enough confidence and strength, going to the small world is tantamount to suicide. Chapter 1172. Zhang Yinfeng and Cui Haoyan looked at each other. Both of them looked a little hesitant. Perhaps they were not as confident as Bailey Hongzhuang, nor were they as aggressive as Bai Junyu. However, after a short period of hesitation, the two of them expressed their stance together. We also have no problem. Seeing that no one flinched, a smile appeared on everyone's faces at the same time. Since everyone has made a decision, then I wish everyone the best. Debachen smiled. Every assessment competition lasts for 2 years. Xia Jiqing asked curiously. Debachen nodded slightly. Yes, there are a lot of monster beasts in this small world. Every time, the cultivators who participate in the assessment competition can solve a lot of them. If the time is short, it is simply not enough to solve these problems. Then why don't we let the various sects send people to solve these monster beasts? Bai Junyu frowned. Since these monster beasts were emerging endlessly, it was better to kill them all. This way, there would be no more trouble. Compared to killing them every 5 years, this kind of situation would undoubtedly solve the root cause completely. The number of monster beasts is too amazing. If we want to kill them all, we will have to pay a price that we can't estimate. If they were so easy to kill, we wouldn't have had to create this small world to solve this problem. Di Beichun slowly said. The existence of this small world was also a big problem for the various forces in the Shengxian continent. They had always wanted to solve the threat of the monster beasts in this small world, but they really couldn't afford the price, so they came up with this method. Listening to Di Beichun's explanation, Bai Junyu nodded slightly. His thinking was a bit too simple. It seems at this time, we will have a monster beast war. Dong Fangyu smiled. Compared to the struggle between humans, this struggle with the demonic beasts might be a little easier. White Lion's eyes lit up when he heard that there was an endless number of demonic beasts inside. As far as it was concerned, it wasn't endless demonic beasts, but endless demonic crystals. If it went to the small world, then it wouldn't have to worry about the demon crystals at all. Although your main opponents in this small world are Yao beasts, the competition between cultivators is not small either. In short, you have to act according to the situation. Don't trust others easily. Di Beichun's deep black eyes revealed a trace of worry. His voice was slightly heavy. The assessment competition that lasted for 2 years was very risky. He only hoped that the participants could return safely. Although this was impossible. We will. Everyone nodded. They were all people who cherished their lives. They only hoped that they could successfully pass the assessment and become a member of the sect. It's still too early to say that. We haven't won the right to participate yet. Gong Shaoqing's voice was still cold, but he clearly stated a fact. It was not easy to obtain the qualifications to participate in the competition. No matter how much they thought about it now, it would be useless if they could not obtain the qualifications to participate. By the way, Beichun, how many participants does your Tiangang sect have? Cui Haoyan looked puzzled. He had heard that each empire only had a few slots. Their group already had a lot of people, so it would not be easy to enter. Chapter 1173. Sects were different from dynasties. This assessment was organized by sects, so they naturally had the most number of slots. For sects, they did not have a problem with the number of slots. As long as they could pass the assessment, they would be qualified. However, it was definitely not an easy task to pass this test. This was completely dependent on one's own strength. No matter who it was, if they could not pass the assessment, then they would not be qualified. This was because every sect would not let a single cultivator affect their reputation. Hearing Di Beichun's words, everyone was relieved. This meant that as long as they were strong enough, they would be able to participate in the assessment together. There are also many opportunities in the pocket dimension. It is said that this pocket dimension was originally a part of the Shengxian continent. Once, a cultivator found an inheritance in the pocket dimension and his strength increased rapidly. Not only that, the pocket dimension has existed for many years. All kinds of medicinal herbs, ores, and heavenly treasures may exist. If you're lucky, you might be able to find a treasure. Di Beichun had a warm and charming smile on his face. This was one of the advantages of the pocket dimension. Inside the house, Bailey Hongzhuang sat in front of Di Beichun. Her beautiful face was flushed red from drinking, but her black eyes were still shining. Beichun, did you see the sect leader today? Her delicate and beautiful face showed a trace of concern. She had not heard any news about the sect leader today and was worried that Di Beichun would not be able to see the sect leader. Di Beichun's lips curled into his signature devilish smile. My wife is becoming more and more concerned about me. Seeing Di Beichun's teasing look, Bailey Hongzhuang's face turned serious. If you continue to be like this, I won't talk to you anymore. Seeing this, Di Beichun hurriedly said, My wife is mighty. Your husband won't joke around anymore. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled again. In terms of teasing, she could not compare to Di Beichun. However, when it came to putting on a serious face, Di Beichun was not her opponent. Everything is just as my wife expected. Di Beichun curled his seductive lips. I saw Master. Bailey Hongzhuang's dark and bright eyes were filled with joy. Her original worries also quietly dissipated. That's good. Wife, don't you want to know what Master thinks of you? Di Beichun blinked. His deep and charming eyes were filled with infinite charm. He only felt that the Hongzhuang in front of him was exceptionally cute. This little woman was especially concerned about his affairs, and he was very touched. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly taken aback, but she pretended to be nonchalant and asked, "What's your evaluation?" Di Beichen knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's indifferent look was a disguise, but he didn't expose her. He smiled and said, "Master said that I have good taste." As he spoke, Di Beichen's expression revealed a hint of pride. He also felt that he had good taste. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to find such a treasure like his wife in the vast sea of people. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips unconsciously curled. Although the sect master had already expressed his thoughts when he saw her, she still felt very happy to hear it again. Di Beichen pulled Bailey Hongzhuang's hand, his eyes filled with deep affection. "Wife, you can rest assured now. I said that Master doesn't have any prejudice against family background." Hongzhuang had been worried about this problem before. He said that it wasn't a problem, but it still couldn't dispel the worry in Hongzhuang's heart. Chapter 1174. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a smile, clear and moving. She didn't say anything, but her smile had already explained everything. "Wife, tomorrow is the day of the assessment. At that time, there will be other cultivators besides you who will be participating in the assessment. Many people in the sect will be paying attention to this matter. I will accompany you to the location of the assessment at that time." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, her eyes flashing with curiosity. "How do you guys do the assessment?" "Wife, how do you think we should do the assessment?" Di Beichen asked back. "I heard that the assessment in the dynasty is a competition, and the strongest cultivators will be able to get spot." Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Thinking about it, the majority of people used this assessment method, which was the simplest and most direct. Di Beichen's lips curled into a devilish arc, and he chuckled. "That is the way the dynasty does it. There's a certain flaw in it, and the sect selection method is different." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang only looked at Di Beichen, wanting to know what Di Beichen meant by a better method. "Tomorrow, you will enter an assessment array, and there will be all kinds of environments and all kinds of monsters inside. The longer you can last, the more outstanding your ability will be. Not only us, many sects use this selection method." Di Beichen's eyes were filled with wisdom. The selection method used by the dynasty does indeed select the strongest cultivators, but in our opinion, having the highest cultivation and the strongest strength doesn't mean that one's ability is the strongest. In the small world, one may encounter all kinds of dangerous situations, which those cultivators who are only good at fighting in the arena will not be able to deal with. Courage and adaptability are also extremely important factors, so our selection will be even more perfect. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. What Di Beichen said was right. She had seen many cultivators perform extremely well on the battle stage, but their reactions in real danger were extremely bad. This was just like Lu Qingyue. Her cultivation was not weak. On the contrary, it was very outstanding. However, in the face of danger, she could not display her true strength. If such a cultivator were to go to a small world, their survival rate would be extremely low. Come to think of it, the big sects organized the assessment tournament to let the young cultivators go to the small world to kill the demonic beasts and improve their strength at the same time. It was not to send everyone to their deaths. "So, this test is an illusion array?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Di Beichen nodded slightly. "Not bad. The methods of the sect are truly different from the rest." Her deep phoenix eyes were filled with emotion and amazement. Just from Di Beichen's expression, she could tell that this illusory formation was not simple. 1,000 years ago, the sects and aristocratic families did not have this kind of selection method. She was very curious, wondering what kind of illusory formation this was. Seeing the curiosity on Bailey Hongzhuang's face, Di Beichen chuckled. "Wife, you'll be able to see it tomorrow. Although, it is an environment, the effect is extremely realistic. Many cultivators find it difficult to face that scene when they use it for the first time. However, when it is used in the assessment, all cultivators will be taking the assessment for the first time. You have to be mentally prepared." "I understand." Bailey Hongzhuang blinked. Just from Di Beichen's words, she could guess some clues. Chapter 1175. The next day, the sky was clear and the sun was just right. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others got up early. Today was the day of the competition, and they were all fully prepared. Di Beichun saw that everyone was ready and immediately smiled. Let's go to the assessment array together. Everyone nodded and immediately followed Di Beichun in the direction of the assessment array. Along the way, many cultivators were surprised when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Originally, they didn't know why this group of unfamiliar cultivators came to Tiangang's sect. Now that they saw the young sect master leading them in the direction of the assessment array, they understood. It turned out that these cultivators were all here to participate in the assessment competition. I heard that yesterday's senior sister Han had a conflict with Bailey Hongzhuang again. Now it seems that the young sect master is really protective of Bailey Hongzhuang. Senior sister Han has completely lost her previous status. Isn't that so? Didn't you see that senior sister Han rarely appears in front of us recently? Isn't it because of this matter that she doesn't want to come out to meet people? Everyone's eyes were locked on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. During this period, Bailey Hongzhuang was the focus of their attention. Han Shilling had been guarding Di Beichun for so many years, but Di Beichun's heart was completely on Bailey Hongzhuang. Whether it was from the point of envy or other aspects, Bailey Hongzhuang made it impossible for them not to pay attention to her. Bailey Hongzhuang walked beside Di Beichun indifferently. All the discussions would disappear when she returned from the assessment competition. Not long after, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived at the location of the assessment array. At a glance, the assessment array was filled with cultivators, but most of them were here to watch the fun. There were only about 20 cultivators who were really going to take the assessment. According to Di Beichun's introduction, the cultivators here were recommended by some people with high status in Tiangang's sect. In fact, the cultivators who entered the assessment competition from a sect would have a higher status in the assessment competition. They were the real seeded contestants. Han Shilling came to the assessment array early in the morning. Since Bailey Hongzhuang announced that she wanted to take part in the assessment competition, then she had to go through the assessment array. She was very curious. If Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't even qualify for the assessment competition, then it would be a real joke. That day in the meeting hall, Bailey Hongzhuang was very clear. Therefore, not only Han Shilling, but the Great Elder and the 4 Palace Masters were also there. After Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey, and Bailey Hongzhuang Hongzhuang, Bailey Hongzhuang seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance, Han Shilling's gaze was fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang. The coldness and resentment in his eyes were obvious. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Han Shilling's face and then stopped paying attention. She was surprised by Han Shilling's persistence. Young sect leader. Everyone bowed when they saw Di Beichun. Di Beichun nodded. His handsome face was dignified. His gaze then fell on the cultivators who were preparing to take the assessment. Today is the day of the competition. I hope everyone can perform well and represent Tiangang's sect in the assessment competition. Chapter 1176. All the female disciples present had no resistance when they saw Di Beichun's handsome face. What's more, Di Beichun was the young lord of Tiangang's sect. However, the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang made the fantasy in everyone's heart fade a little, but this still did not stop their fantasy. Looking at the appearance of everyone's fighting spirit, Di Beichun was also very satisfied. His eyes then fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He smiled and said, "You also go to the team to prepare for the assessment later." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others immediately walked into the team. In front of the disciples of Tiangang's sect, they would maintain absolute respect for Di Beichun. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' eyes couldn't help but fall on the illusion array in front of them. The scope of this array was not small. It had not been opened yet, but they could notice that there were many mysterious totems in the center of the array. Xia Jiqing curiously looked at the assessment array. This is the illusion array that we're going to take the assessment in a while. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Yes, it said that this illusion array can simulate all kinds of demonic beasts. When you take the test, you must control the fear in your heart and display your strongest strength. Fear was the most difficult emotion for human beings to overcome. Even if it was an illusion array, the feeling was still extremely realistic. Except for the pain, everything else was the same. Therefore, it was not a simple matter to pass this assessment. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the faces of Xia Jiqing and the others all showed a serious look. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang both explained the illusion array to them. They also understood the content of the assessment and kept convincing themselves that everything they would face later was fake. However, no matter how well they convinced themselves now, it may not be as they wished during the assessment. The cultivators who were waiting for the assessment, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, had a look of dissatisfaction in their eyes. There had always been a lot of capable people in Tiangang's sect. Even though the people from the special enrollment class had only shown their faces once when they followed He Mu to Tiangang's sect, everyone had already found out their identities. He was a cultivator from the special enrollment class of the Kangling College and a friend of Bailey Hongzhuang. The Azure Water School did have a certain reputation, but that influence was only within the dynasty. For the sects, the reputation of the Azure Water School was obviously not loud enough. In their opinion, the reason why this group of cultivators from the special enrollment class could come to Tiangang's sect for the assessment was entirely because of Bailey Hongzhuang. This Bailey Hongzhuang really dares to do anything just because the young lord likes her. She came to Tiangang's sect to take the assessment by herself, but she even brought her friends here. The young lord also allowed her to fool around. It's really amazing. No choice who asked young sect master to like it. However, if these people don't perform well and can't even obtain a single spot, then that would be really funny. Everyone was talking about it. In fact, almost no one present was optimistic about the strength of Xia Jiqing and the others. Haha, in my opinion, this possibility is very high. Han Xiling chuckled, and the words he said did not give Bailey Hongzhuang any face. When she knew that Xia Jiqing and the others came here to take the assessment, she felt that Bailey Hongzhuang had dug a hole for herself. Chapter 1177. Originally, the discussion of the surrounding cultivators had already made Gong Shaoqing and the others' faces very ugly. They also knew that the crowd was right. The reason why they could come to Tiangang's sect to participate in the assessment was indeed because of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. However, the crowd's denial of their strength was something they would not admit. Even if they were not born in a famous sect, they still had confidence in their own strength. Indeed, they may not be the strongest here, but they also had confidence that they would not be the worst. The other people's comments were fine, but Han Xiling actually took the initiative to find trouble, which was not something they could tolerate. The dignified young lady of Tiangang's sect doesn't even have a little tolerance. Zhang Yinfeng coldly glanced at Han Xiling. Since Han Xiling was so rude to them, she naturally would not be polite to Han Xiling. This woman not only has no tolerance, but is simply narrow-minded. Why bother with her? Xia Jiqing coldly snorted. She really did not like Han Xiling, but this woman liked to jump in front of them. Gong Shaoqing, Dong Fangyu, and the other men just faintly looked at Han Xiling. They could not argue with a woman, but the disgust on their faces was still obvious. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. Han Xiling usually found trouble with her, but now she also ridiculed Xia Jiqing and the others. It was too much. You really have a kind of magic that makes people hate you as soon as you open your mouth. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang opened her mouth, her words did not give Han Xiling any face. The smile on Han Xiling's face suddenly froze, followed by a touch of anger from her eyes, revealing an unspeakable anger. Bailey Hongzhuang, do you really think you are so great? Han Xiling looked at Bailey Hongzhuang angrily. She couldn't bear the thought of Bailey Hongzhuang acting all high and mighty in front of her. When Han Hongyi saw the conflict between Han Xiling and Bailey Hongzhuang, he couldn't help but glance at Han Xiling. What happened before could be hidden from others, but not from him. Before, there was no one on the side, so if there was a conflict, then it was fine. Now, there were so many people here, if Xi Ling had a conflict with Bailey Hongzhuang, it would damage her reputation. Noticing the warning in Han Hongyi's eyes, Han Xiling could only suppress his dissatisfaction for the time being. Looking at Han Xiling's repressed and resentful expression, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved slightly. She then turned around, too lazy to talk to Han Shieling. When Di Beichun saw the four palace masters and the great elder present, he couldn't help but chuckle. I didn't expect that today's assessment would attract everyone. What young lord is concerned about? We are naturally also very concerned. Xiao Hongzhen laughed aloud. He had been looking for an opportunity to take down Di Beichun. If Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't pass the assessment array today, it was naturally an excellent opportunity. Di Beichun glanced at Xiao Hongzhen indifferently. From the moment Xiao Hongzhen appeared here, he already understood what Xiao Hongzhen was planning. However, he believed in Hong Zhuang's strength. Just from Hong Zhuang's performance in the Bloody Abyss, he could see that Hong Zhuang never lacked courage, perseverance, and fighting strength. Although it was the first time she came into contact with the assessment array, he believed that Hong Zhuang would be able to do well. Chapter 1178. Di Beichun nodded, but the words he said were not consistent with Qin Ai's question. They're all good friends I met at the Kangling College. I think the four palace masters may not know that I am also a student of the Kangling College's special enrollment class. With Di Beichun's voice falling, everyone was stunned for a moment. They looked at Di Beichun strangely. They really didn't know much about this matter. In fact, Di Beichun went to the Kangling College after returning to the sect. Before Di Beichun returned to the sect, everyone often paid attention to Di Beichun's movements. After Di Beichun had stood up again, they didn't need to pay as much attention as before. However, they didn't expect that Di Beichun would also become a student of the Kangling College's special enrollment class. This was really incredible. The people who had originally ridiculed the Kangling College for not being able to stand in public also shut their mouths after hearing Di Beichun's words. Even the young sect master was a student of the Kangling College. How could they dare to say anything bad about the Kangling College? Han Shilling's face was ugly. Big Brother Di's words were obviously protecting Bailey Hongzhuang. In fact, Di Beichun was protecting Bailey Hongzhuang. He specifically emphasized the fact that Xia Jiqing and others were his friends so that everyone could not blame Bailey Hongzhuang. These people were invited by him and were also his friends. They had nothing to do with Bailey Hongzhuang. If someone wanted to find trouble, they could just come to him. It turns out that the young sect master has also been to the Kangling College. The young sect master's friends are also friends of the Tiangang sect. Qin Ai smiled faintly. When he spoke, his eyes fell on Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi. He deliberately asked this question to prevent Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi from finding problems with him again. Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi looked at Qin Ai coldly. Qin Ai was their stumbling block. Bailey Hongzhuang, Xia Jiqing, and the others also smiled after hearing Di Beichun's words. With Di Beichun around, things are indeed different. That Han Shieling can only obediently shut up. Xia Jiqing smiled and winked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Originally, she was worried that Hongzhuang would be bullied by Han Shieling here. Now that she saw how Di Beichun was protecting Bailey Hongzhuang, she knew that no one could do anything to Hongzhuang as long as Di Beichun was there. A bright smile appeared on her alluring face. It was like hundreds of flowers were blooming, gorgeous and beautiful. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang smile, the eyes of many cultivators present condensed on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Bailey Hongzhuang's beauty could not be ignored by anyone. Originally, she just stood quietly and attracted everyone's attention. Now, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's smile, everyone couldn't take their eyes off her. Their eyes were full of intoxication and shock. No wonder the young sect master likes Bailey Hongzhuang. Such a woman, no man can resist her charm. Although Han Shieling is very beautiful, compared with Bailey Hongzhuang, there is still a big gap. The eyes of the male disciples present were full of admiration. Only as men, they understood the thoughts of the young sect master better. Listening to the emotions of the male disciples, Han Shieling's face became gloomy again. She was recognized by everyone as not as beautiful as Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 1179. Young Master, since everyone is here, why don't we start first? Gu Jingqing suggested. Di Beichun nodded slightly, his noble and handsome face full of majesty. The qualification test for the assessment competition begins now. As Di Baichen's voice fell, the elder on the side immediately understood, and his eyes fell on the group of cultivators who were preparing for the assessment. If you want to qualify for the assessment competition, you need to pass through the assessment array. As long as you can persist in the assessment array for 3 incense sticks, you will be qualified. If it is less than 3 incense sticks, you will be disqualified. In this assessment array, you will be in the mountains, and all kinds of monsters will appear. You need to deal with them on your own. Once you die in the illusion, you will automatically withdraw from the assessment array. Is there anything you don't understand? The elder concisely explained the situation of the assessment array. Many foreign cultivators didn't understand what the assessment array was, so it was necessary to introduce its functions. No, everyone shook their heads. They had a certain understanding of the assessment array from various channels before, but they had never really seen it. Now, 5 people in a group enter the assessment array. As the elder's voice fell, the 5 cultivators at the front hesitated for a moment before walking into the assessment array. They only saw the elder put a spirit stone next to the assessment array, and then the array started. Everyone only saw a ray of light enveloping the 5 people in the array, and from the facial expressions of these cultivators, they could see that they had fallen into the illusion array. The situation inside the assessment array is really bloody and violent. When I entered the assessment array for the first time, I was scared out of my wits. Yes, especially the first time you went in, your results were the worst. It is not easy to persist for 3 incense sticks. Although the strength of the cultivators who can come to the sect for the qualification test is good, there are not many cultivators who represent the sect to participate in the assessment competition every year. I think this time will be no exception. I am most curious about what results Bailey Hongzhuang and the group of cultivators from the Azure Water School will get. If the duration is too short, it will be embarrassing. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were sizing up the situation of the cultivators in the assessment array when the discussions of the surrounding cultivators gradually entered their ears. After all, their appearance today was already a hot topic. After hearing these words, Xia Jiqing and the others couldn't help but look dignified. Before coming to Tiangang sect, they didn't think too much about the problem. They just felt that this was a good opportunity. However, after facing the current situation, they realized that everything was not that simple. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen were also under a lot of pressure to be able to come here for the assessment. If their performance today was bad, not only would they be laughed at by everyone, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen would also be implicated by them. This was not something they wanted to see. Gong Shaoqing, Dong Fengyu, and the others looked at each other. They all felt the existence of this pressure. In a situation where no one was optimistic about them, they could only encourage themselves. Only if they performed well enough would they be able to shut all these cultivators up. Chapter 1180. Survival of the fittest was the rule of the Shengxian continent. All respect must be earned with their own strength. They must work hard to obtain the qualifications to participate in the assessment competition, not only for themselves, but also for Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen, for their trust. Everyone's hearts were filled with anger. Even if everyone was not optimistic about them, they would believe in their own strength. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows wrinkled slightly. She didn't think that these cultivators would keep saying such things. In fact, when Di Baichen first proposed it, she did not think that there would be such problems. Now, listening to the ridicule of these cultivators, she only felt that it was particularly harsh, and she also felt sorry for Xia Jiqing and the others. If it were not for her inviting Jiqing and the others to come to Tiangang sect together, they would not have to endure such humiliation. I'm sorry for everyone, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly, her delicate face full of guilt. You don't need to pay attention to these words. Just pretend you didn't hear it for the time being. Don't feel pressure. These remarks were not something she could stop as soon as she opened her mouth. She did not want Xia Jiqing and the others to bear all the unnecessary pressure because of her. Hongzhuang, this is not your fault. You don't have to apologize. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xia Jiqing was the first to answer. That's right. These words aren't completely targeted at us. Even other cultivators would have heard similar words under such circumstances. Dongfeng Yu's face was filled with a gentle smile. Obviously, he did not put these problems in his eyes. We are not so fragile. Gong Xiaoqing's voice followed. Bailey Hongzhuang turned her eyes and saw that Xia Jiqing and the others' faces were all showing an indifferent smile. Her worried heart was completely put down. Indeed, she underestimated the strength of Gong Xiaoqing and the others' hearts. Immediately afterward, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at the assessment array again. As time gradually passed, everyone noticed that the faces of the cultivators in the assessment array gradually turned pale, and beads of sweat gradually appeared on their foreheads. Their expressions were also different from each other. Some of them gritted their teeth and persevered, while others had looks of fear on their faces. Beside the test array, an incense stick was burning continuously. There was also a cultivator who was paying attention to the incense stick. Once it burned out, he would immediately light up the second incense stick. "Look, the cultivator on the left can't hold on any longer," a cultivator's voice suddenly rang out. As the voice rang out, everyone looked at the cultivator on the left. They saw that the cultivator's face was getting paler and paler, and his eyes were filled with intense fear. Following that, the cultivator suddenly exited the assessment formation. He panted heavily and fell heavily to the ground with a pale face. A cultivator immediately walked to the cultivator's side and said, "It's all right now. Wake up." Hearing this, the cultivator was stunned for a moment. After seeing the surrounding cultivators, he revealed a look of understanding. However, the fear in his eyes did not disappear. Clearly, he had encountered something extremely frightening. How long did I last? After resting for a while, the cultivator remembered the most important thing and could not help but ask. Chapter 1181. After knowing that he had only persisted for a stick of incense's time, the cultivator's face immediately became ugly. To qualify for the assessment, one needed to persist in the assessment array for 3 sticks of incense's time. However, he only persisted for a stick of incense's time. When he turned his head, he found that he was the first cultivator who could not hold on. For a time, feeling the eyes of everyone again, the cultivator only felt his face turn red. He was full of confidence before, but he did not expect his strength to be so weak. It seems that the scene seen in the assessment is really terrifying. This cultivator is scared to such an extent. Xia Jiqing's face was full of emotion. She believed that the cultivators who had reached this step would have a lot of experience. It could even scare him to such an extent. It could be seen how terrifying the scene he encountered was. We are likely to face the scene of our own death. His reaction is not strange. The dark eyes flashed with wisdom. There is nothing more terrifying than one's own death. In the face of one's own death, no matter which cultivator, it was impossible to let go. Xia Jiqing suddenly realized that if it was really such a situation, then it was really difficult to deal with. Not long after the first cultivator came out, another cultivator also withdrew from the assessment array. The reaction of this cultivator was the same as the first cultivator, and even when he withdrew, there was a scream. If the disciples of Tian Gangzong did not immediately go forward to remind this cultivator, it was afraid that this cultivator would not have recovered for a while. It is really not easy to participate in the assessment array. In less than 2 sticks of incense's time, 2 cultivators were eliminated. Cui Haoyan's eyes were filled with a trace of amazement. These cultivators were different from them. They had the opportunity to come to Tian Gangzong to participate in the assessment array because they knew Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. However, these cultivators had the opportunity to represent Tian Gangzong to participate in the assessment array. It could be seen that their strength was definitely not weak. However, these cultivators could not pass, and the pressure on them was even greater. With Cui Haoyan's voice falling, Gong Xiaoqing and the others did not speak, but their expressions became more dignified. After the time it took for 2 incense sticks to burn, another cultivator withdrew from the assessment array. Only 2 cultivators remained. As the second incense stick burned out, everyone could guess the result in their hearts. 2 out of 5 cultivators were qualified to participate in the assessment competition. This was a good result. However, just as the second incense stick was about to burn out, one of the cultivators was forced to retreat. Seeing this, everyone couldn't help but sigh. This cultivator was just a little bit away from obtaining the qualifications. They didn't expect that he would fail at the last moment. It was truly too unfortunate. This cultivator's eyes were filled with annoyance when he realized that he had missed the opportunity by a hair's breadth. Compared to the 3 cultivators who had failed earlier, he was undoubtedly the most depressed one. In the end, only one of the 5 cultivators managed to hold on for the duration of 3 incense sticks. However, this cultivator exited the assessment array not long after the 4th incense stick was lit. After this cultivator knew that he had succeeded, his face was pale, but his expression was filled with pride and joy. This was the embodiment of strength. Chapter 1182. The second batch of cultivators enter the assessment array. After the end of the first round of assessment, the elder's voice was heard. Immediately after, the second batch of cultivators immediately entered the assessment array and began the assessment. The results of the second batch of cultivators were slightly better than the first batch of cultivators. 2 cultivators were qualified. Every cultivator who was qualified to participate in the assessment stood at the side and received the envious gazes of the crowd. This was the treatment enjoyed by the victors. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest stood quietly at the back. They came relatively late, so they took the assessment very late. After waiting for a while, it was finally their turn. Cui Haoyin and Zhang Yunfeng glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest and said, "Let's go in first." Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest looked at each other and nodded immediately. "Good luck." Cui Haoyin and Zhang Yunfeng nodded. "We will." Immediately after, the 2 of them walked into the assessment array with the other 3 cultivators. As Cui Haoyin and Lu Xian took part in the assessment, the surrounding cultivators were all watching their performance. They wanted to know how the 2 of them would fare. Chapter 1183. Zhang Yunfeng's eyes were filled with an incredible look. "But I feel like I've been in there for a long time." She only felt that she had been in the assessment array for a long time. She didn't expect that it was only a stick of incense worth of time. It really gave her a big blow. After really understanding the situation in the assessment array, she understood how difficult it was to persist for 3 sticks of incense worth of time. Bailey Hongzhuang and Xia Zhiqing helped Zhang Yunfeng up. Although this result was not what they had expected, they had no other choice at this point. Seeing Zhang Yunfeng being the first to be eliminated, Han Xiling's lips couldn't help but reveal a smile. He immediately looked at Tao Songrong next to him. Tao Songrong immediately understood and immediately chuckled. "I said that the strength of the cultivators of the Kingland College is not good enough. The first to be eliminated, I thought they were great." As Tao Songrong took the lead to talk about this issue, the surrounding cultivators also nodded. Yes, although the Kingland College has a good reputation in the dynasty, it is still not good enough here. Zhang Yunfeng was the first to be eliminated. In my opinion, the performance of the other cultivators of the Kingland College will not be much better. Listening to the ridicule of the crowd, Zhang Yunfeng's face was ugly to the extreme. There was also a hint of shame. She really didn't expect such a situation. "I'm sorry, I implicated everyone," Zhang Yunfeng said with shame. She wanted to perform well for herself, for the Kangling College, and for her friends. She didn't expect her performance to be so bad, implicating everyone to be ridiculed by others. Looking at Zhang Yunfeng's ashamed appearance, everyone quickly said, "This is nothing. You don't have to take it to heart." However, at this moment, Cui Haoyin and another cultivator withdrew from the assessment array at the same time. Both of them had persisted for 2 sticks of incense worth of time. There was still a long time before the 3rd stick of incense burned out. Cui Haoyin's face was also pale, but he quickly recovered his consciousness. After learning that he had never heard of the assessment, his face was a little ugly. One after another, in my opinion, the cultivators of the Kangling College will not be able to pass. Han Xiling's mouth evoked a sneer. It seemed that she really had a good show to watch today. Just from a situation of Cui Haoyin and Zhang Yunfeng, She could predict the fate of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. If Bailey Hongzhuang did not pass, or the cultivators of the Kingland College were all wiped out, then she wanted to see how arrogant Bailey Hongzhuang could be. Even if Brother D was willing to protect her, she would still be despised by everyone. Young Master, the cultivators of the Kingland College. Xiao Hongjin felt a burst of joy in his heart, but on the surface, he pretended to be very helpless. He couldn't help but look at Di Bei Chun. D. Young Master, even if you have a good relationship with them, as the young master, you can't be too emotional. Jiang Yi sighed, his words revealing the meaning of teaching Di Bei Chun how to do things. Palace Master Xiao, Palace Master Jiang, this assessment is not yet the end. You don't have to worry. Qin AI slowly said. Chapter 1184. Looking at Di Beichen's indifferent look, Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi's eyes showed a trace of displeasure, but they did not continue to say anything. In their opinion, Di Beichen was just putting up a strong front. Later, once Bailey Hongzhuang and the others failed, it would be even more difficult for Di Beichen to step down. Young Sect Master, in my opinion, you seem to be too protective of Bailey Hongzhuang, right? At this moment, a man arrived late and slowly appeared in everyone's line of sight. With the appearance of this man, everyone's eyes fell on him, and their expressions revealed a somewhat unusual meaning. Bailey Hongzhuang also noticed this man. She saw that the man was wearing a black robe, and his age was about the same as Di Beichen's. He was handsome and could be said to be romantic and elegant, but there was still a big gap between his appearance and Di Beichen's evildoers. However, Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that a malicious light flashed inadvertently in this man's eyes. Even if his romantic and elegant appearance concealed it very well, the moment he saw Di Beichen, this malicious light still uncontrollably showed itself. Almost immediately, Bailey Hongzhuang had already confirmed the man's identity, Ji Yangxia. Earlier, she had already heard that Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi had been constantly finding trouble with Di Beichen, wanting to push Di Beichen down from the position of young sect master in order to push Ji Yangxia to the position of young sect master. However, she had never seen Ji Yangxia since she came to Tiangang sect. She did not expect to see him on such an occasion. This Ji Yangxia is really arrogant. Even Di Beichen came early, but he still dares to come late. Xiao He frowned. Just looking at Ji Yangxia's smile made it feel uncomfortable. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a mocking smile. This guy deliberately came late. Di Beichen's sudden return must have given him a big blow. She could imagine how glorious Ji Yangxia was in Tiangang sect when Di Beichen was not around. However, once Di Beichen returned, Ji Yangxia no longer regained his original position. It was tantamount to suddenly falling from the clouds. Today, Ji Yangxia had appeared again, presumably to laugh at them. Speaking of which, these two temple masters and Ji Yangxia were all menacing. That's true, Xiaobai chuckled. When the tiger is not around, the monkey is king. When Di Beichen comes later, Ji Yangxia will be beaten back to his original state. Ji Yangxia slowly walked in front of Di Beichen. Although he called Di Beichen young sect master, his arrogant appearance showed that he was not really convinced. Everyone looked at Di Beichen and Ji Yangxia. The conflict between these two people was well known in Tiangang sect. Now that Ji Yangxia was the first to make trouble, no one knew how the young sect master would solve it. Di Beichen glanced at Ji Yangxia indifferently. The corners of his lips curled into a devilish smile again, and his expression was somewhat disdainful. As soon as she saw Di Beichen's expression, Bailey Hongzhuang knew that Ji Yangxia was going to suffer a blow. What does it have to do with you that I'm protecting my wife? Di Beichen looked at Ji Yangxia lazily. His low and magnetic voice was full of impudence and dominance. It was just Ji Yangxia. If it were not for the support of the two temple masters, he would have completely crippled him. At this time, Ji Yangxia still dared to take the initiative to find trouble with him. He was simply courting death. Chapter 1185. Ji Yangxia's face instantly became ugly, as if he couldn't understand why Di Beichen was so arrogant today. Previously, even though Di Beichun had swiftly and decisively regained the position of a young lord, but due to the pressure of the two palace lords, he had never directly confronted him. What was going on today? For a moment, Jiangxia was a little embarrassed. Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi's faces also changed a little. Di Beichun's performance today was indeed a little unusual. However, on second thought, the two felt that it was very likely that Di Beichun had to say this because of the failure of the Kangling College's cultivators. Young sect master, aren't you going a little too far with your words? Xiao Hongjin spoke slowly. His words were filled with the intention of awakening someone. Di Beichun glanced at Xiao Hongjin indifferently. Does Temple Master Xiao have a problem with me? As soon as these words came out, Xiao Hongjin was stunned again. Was Di Beichun going to take the initiative to provoke a conflict today? Not only Xiao Hongjin, but even Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing also couldn't understand Di Beichun. They also understood that Di Beichun wanted to get rid of Xiao Hongjin and Jiang, but the two had been in Tiangang's sect for too long, and their positions were too stable. It was obviously impossible to uproot them immediately. However, as long as they were given a certain amount of time, they would definitely be able to get rid of them completely. Young sect master, what you said is too serious, Jiang Yi immediately said. However, Di Beichun didn't give any face to these two people at all. I'm a young lord. You only need to listen to my orders. As for my decisions, it's not up to the two temple masters to question. As for Jiangxia, he's just an ordinary cultivator in my Tiangang sect. How dare you have a problem with me? In my opinion, you don't want to stay in Tiangang's sect anymore, do you? The low and magnetic voice was full of domineering, as usual. Di Beichun's expression was gentle and lazy. Even when he said such words, he still seemed to be talking about the good weather today. It wasn't that he couldn't uproot the two temple masters from Tiangang's sect before, but they were both promoted by his master. On the one hand, he had to worry about his master. Now, all these problems no longer existed, and he didn't need to be polite. As soon as these words came out, the cultivators present couldn't help but open their mouths and looked at Di Beichun in horror. Di Beichun was actually going to expel Jiangxia from Tiangang's sect directly? Jiangxia's face was as gloomy as water. He could no longer maintain his previous elegant smile. There was a trace of panic in his eyes. He did not understand why Di Beichun had become completely different after his return. Young sect master, I've always treated Jiangxia as my own son. What do you think of me by saying this? Xiao Hongjin hurriedly spoke out, his expression full of displeasure. TSSSS. Temples, TSSSS, TSSSS, TSSS. Don't tell me. You think Tiangang's sect is yours? I respect you because you're a founding member of Tiangang's sect. Don't take advantage of your seniority. Di Beichun's voice was light, but the words he said didn't give Xiao Hongjin and the others any face. Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing looked at each other, and their eyes were full of amazement. Chapter 1186. Xia Jiqing, Dongfang Yu, and the others all looked at Di Beichun in amazement. On ordinary days, Di Beichun was always very kind when he was with them. At this moment, seeing Di Beichun like this, they really understood the power of the sect's young sect master. His casual attitude and arrogant and unruly words were simply shocking. Di Beichun is really too handsome. Xia Jiqing's eyes were filled with worship. She had previously felt that Di Beichun was very domineering, but now it seemed that her previous thoughts were too simple. This is the power of Di Beichun. These annoying guys dare to question Di Beichun. They really deserve it. Zhang Yinfeng clapped her hands and cheered. Even if she didn't know the internal situation of Tiangang's sect, she knew that these guys were definitely not good things. Bailey Hongzhuang still had a cloud-like appearance. Her rose-colored lips evoked an enchanting arc. It seemed that Di Beichun had already begun to make his move. These old guys were no different from the cancer of Tiangang's sect. If Di Beichun really wanted to sit in the position of Tiangang's sect, he needed to remove these tumors one by one. The atmosphere became stiff for a while, and even the assessment of the last group was suspended. The disciples of Tiangang's sect were all looking at each other. They had never seen the contradiction between the young sect master and the palace master. Today, they only felt that they worshipped Di Beichun even more. Han Shiling's eyes also showed a look of worship and admiration. This was the big brother Di she had always worshipped. No matter what the situation was, Big Brother D always had a kind of domineering and arrogance that other men couldn't match, making people intoxicated. Taking advantage of his seniority. When Xiao Hongjin was crowned with these words by Di Beichun, he could no longer keep calm. Di Beichun trampled on his dignity in front of everyone. If he was criticized by Di Beichun today, how could he maintain the majesty in front of the disciples in the future? Di Beichun, Xiao Hongjin's face was full of anger, and he didn't even call him young sect master anymore. I watched you grow up from a child to the present. Since the sect master left, I have helped you take charge of Tiangang's sect. No matter what, I am your elder. If the sect master knows that you have become like this after growing up, the sect master will be very disappointed. Yes, even if you grow up, you can't forget your roots. Jiang, he followed up. Since Di was so, they would teach Di Beichun a lesson in public. Di Beichun's majesty would also be dealt a big blow to Di's majesty. Di's majesties. Di Beichun S woods. Jesus is Ji's yang. Esli Yang's his was wondering how Di would. S's response? Di's Beichun's was put. This was making Beichun's Beichun was in his sim. He's Beichun's this. No matter what, Di Beichun would end up with a reputation of not respecting his elders. However, in the face of Xiao Hongjin's and Jiang Yi's accusations, Di Beichun's lips curled into a cold smile. Over the years, he had long been tired of these two fellows' actions of taking advantage of their seniority. When Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing saw that the situation was so rigid, they wanted to speak up to ease the tension. Just then, a vicissitude and majestic voice suddenly sounded from behind. I didn't know that I needed Palace Master Xiao to help Beichun manage Tiangang sect on my behalf. Chapter 1187. Sect Leader. Someone took the lead and shouted. Then everyone bowed and saluted. Greetings, Sect Leader. Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing looked at each other. They did not expect the sect leader to suddenly return. Before this, none of them knew about this news. Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi's faces instantly turned ugly. They simply could not believe what they were seeing. The sect leader had really returned. In the past 4 years, there had been no news of the sect leader. They had also inquired for a long time, but it was as if the sect leader had disappeared from this world after leaving. Before the sect leader left, they had been very concerned about this matter. However, as time gradually passed, they had also forgotten about this matter. Now, they only hoped that the sect leader would never return. After all, there was a certain amount of risk when a cultivator was looking for an opportunity to break through. Some strong cultivators had fallen while looking for a breakthrough. This was also a common occurrence. They didn't expect the sect master to suddenly return. Moreover, he appeared after they said such words. Almost in a short moment, Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi understood that this was a trap set by Di Beichun. The reason why Di Beichun had acted like this before was to provoke them and make them say such outrageous things. Now that the sect leader had appeared and heard what they had said, he would undoubtedly be very angry. Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi both stared coldly at Di Beichun. They did not expect that Di Beichun had become so calculative after not seeing him for a while. The complacency in Ji Yangxia's eyes dissipated in an instant and was replaced by a thick fear. He was about the same age as Di Beichun. He knew how much the sect leader doted on Di Beichun. When the sect leader was not around, his master and the others did not push him to the position of young sect leader. After the sect leader returned, he was completely out of luck with the position of young sect leader. Originally, he did not take Di Beichun's words seriously because there were 2 temple masters here. Di Beichun could not expel him from Tiangang's sect. However, now that the sect leader had returned, he might even have seen his previous performance clearly. Under such circumstances, even his master could not protect himself, let alone him. Situ Yin slowly walked over. Even though he did not say anything, the aura of a superior lingered in the air. It was the first time for many Tiangong sect disciples to see the sect master in person. They all looked at Situ Yin curiously. After Situ Yin walked to the side of Deep Beichun and the others, the four palace masters bowed together. "Greetings, sect master." "Master," Deep Beichun called out. Situ Yin waved his hand slightly. His gaze then fell on Xiao Hongjin and Jiang. His weathered and dignified face revealed a faint smile. "I didn't know that the two hall masters would spend so much effort while I was away from Tiangong sect." Even though Situ Yin said it casually, Xiao Hongjin and Jiang, he could hear the anger in his words. They quickly knelt down and said, "Sect master, we just spoke carelessly before. We didn't mean it. I hope sect master can forgive us." Xiao Hongjin and Jiang, you were both sweating profusely. They dared to treat Di Beichen like that, but they absolutely did not dare to face Situ Yin. Situ Yin glanced at the two of them indifferently. Spoke carelessly. Chapter 1188. Although many cultivators didn't know the attitude of the two temple masters towards Di Beichun, they could tell that the two temple masters didn't treat Di Beichun well based on their previous performance. What's more, as the young sect master of Tiangong sect, Di Beichun was forced to leave Tiangong sect for 2 years. This was something everyone knew. Previously, everyone thought that if the sect master hadn't left, Di Beichun wouldn't have been forced to leave. Now that Di Beichun had returned, and the sovereign had also returned, she was afraid that the days of the two palace masters would not be easy. Di Beichun is the young sect master of Tiangong sect. No matter what you say, you can't disobey the young sect master. Situ Yin spoke bluntly. He also knew the situation Di Beichun was facing. Now, it seemed that the situation was much more serious than he thought. Hearing the reproach in Situ Yin's words, Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi's hearts sank. Situ Yin's sudden appearance today was tantamount to giving them a head-on blow. All their previous plans turned into bubbles with Situ Yin's appearance. When they thought of everything they had done before, they only felt that a great disaster was imminent. Situ Yin was never a simple person to be able to become the sect master. Di Beichun's swift and decisive means were largely influenced by Situ Yin. Don't look at Situ Yin's kind appearance. When he was ruthless, he was cruel. I don't know. During the time I was away, Tiangong sect didn't value status, but seniority. Situ Yin looked at Xiao Hongjin and Jiang meaningfully. Before he left, he never thought that Xiao Hongjin and Jiang would be so bold to do such a thing. Just looking at the situation in front of him, he could imagine the suffering Di Beichun had suffered over the years. Speaking of which, he also felt that he owed Di Beichun a lot. "Sect master, we didn't mean that." Xiao Hongjin braced himself to explain. If this was confirmed, then their following days would be really difficult. What does that mean? Situ Yin had no intention of giving Xiao Hongjin a way out. At this point, the selfishness of Xiao Hongjin and Situ Yin could not be more obvious. All the explanations were just lame cover-ups. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Situ Yin, who was so resolute. Her eyes lit up with joy. She was wondering why Situ Yin hadn't shown himself even though he was messing around. It turned out that he was waiting for an opportunity to make things difficult for Xiao Hongjin. If Xiao Hongjin and the other two had known about the sect master's return, they would have done everything they could to cover up what they had done. As a result, they were able to find fault with the two of them, making it much easier to deal with them. "Sect master," Jiang wanted to explain, but he couldn't say anything for a long time. This was because he simply could not find a reason to cover up all of this. Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing also looked at Xiao Hongjin and Gu Jingqing indifferently. Speaking of which, the two of them had brought this upon themselves. Ji Yangsha lowered his head. Once the two temple masters were punished, he wouldn't have a good ending either. Situ Yin raised his right hand and stopped Jiang Yi. "The two of you go back and think about it. Prepare for the punishment."